Hi, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of Web3 Week. I am going to be your host and MC for the day. I'm Kyle Ellicott. I'm a partner at Stacks Ventures and very excited to kick off this day 2 of what seems to be an outstanding week full of nonstop conversations and great people talking about where our digital future is going. And we all know, or maybe not, and I'll give you a little overview here in just a moment, but the beginnings of the word metaverses or metaverse came from Snow Crash. And from there, we moved into Second Life and the Sandbox and furthermore science fiction, gaming, all of these areas started preparing us for a Ready Player One like future and a way of life that, again, we've come to know as the metaverse. And this is no fad as well. We've seen over almost $2 billion in digital land sales over the last few years. We've got multiple variations of avatars. We've got virtual, live, crossover events that are both happening physical and digital. And some of the largest brands in the world have begun to lay the foundations of how they will see and interact with the metaverse, from Nike and their retail store Nike Land to Zara and Puma's clothing lines, to also those that are preparing for what may come, from Disney to L'Oreal to HSBC to CBS to the NFL to the NBA and airlines, all looking at what our digital future may look like, which is super exciting because that's, again, what we're here to talk about at Web3 Week. Web3 Week, for those tuning in for the first time, is a 3-day nonstop conference, each day focused on something different pertaining to Web3. Yesterday, we spoke about non-fungible tokens, NFTs, from everything from NFT traders to fans to what to do, what not to do for the future of NFTs. Today, we're talking about gaming and GameFi. Game with financial mechanisms tied to that. Think of play to earn or move to earn. Some of these new things that we're starting to see around gaming and how gaming will evolve in a digital future, along with the metaverse and what our digital lives will encompass as we start to push forward more connected than ever. Tomorrow, day 3 is immutable. It is a conference about everything at the intersection of music and blockchain. And make sure you stay tuned on Twitter and social media at hashtag Web3Week as well. Now, today we're going to be kicking off. We've got a handful of great sessions from some of the best builders, investors, and some of the biggest names in GameFi and Metaverse, including that of Snow Crash author Neal Stephenson, who will be joining us in the second half of the day and also will be joining in Discord to speak with many of you as well. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you jump into Discord and join in with your CrashPunk, join into the CrashPunks Discord, specifically to have that interactive session with Neal Stephenson later in the day, and also to take questions as well. And with that, I want to welcome up our very first panel and get things kicked off here today for us. The first panel will be talking about syncs, taps, and sustainable GameFi. I want to welcome up Lisa, Sir Jonathan, and Rodrigo to the stage with our moderator, Leah. The floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here today to chat about the sustainability of in-game virtual economies. My name is Leah Callum-Butler. I'll be moderating the session today. If we haven't met before, I'm the director of an advisory firm that is focused on Web3 for social impact called Emphasis. I also write an opinion column for CoinDesk. I'm mainly looking at things like adoption of blockchain across Southeast Asia. And I was also the writer and narrator of a mini documentary, which was all about the rise of NFT gaming in the Philippines called, Play to Earn. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce our speakers. Maybe you guys could introduce yourself just briefly so that everybody knows who you are, where you're working, and what you're focused on. Rodrigo, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, my name is Rodrigo, and I'm the founder of a game called Moonray, and we are building like an action PvP game on Unreal Engine that's focused on integrating, NFTs and tokens into, like modern PvP combat, basically.
Awesome, thanks, Rodrigo. And Lisa.
I'm Lisa. I'm the founder of Economics Design, and what we do, we look at every game like a country. And with countries, you've got rules in place, you've got governance in place, and how do you build that into a sustainable system? How do we, if a government comes together to keep updating the system, so we should do that for the game economy as well. And how do we do that? How do we make it sustainable? How do we make it profitable for everyone in the system?
Super interesting. I have to say, I am a long-time fan of your newsletter, Lisa, so I'm stoked that we're on a panel together today. And Sir Jonathan, did you want to just introduce yourself quickly?
Hello, everyone. I'm Sir Jonathan. I'm the CEO of Stacks Degens. It's pretty much a GameFi development company, and we're just trying to offer the turnkey solution to transition any game from Web 2 to Web 3 ready. Standard, yes.
Nice, thank you. So we've only got about half an hour today, so let's dive straight in. If anybody has questions that they'd like to ask the panelists, I am going to be monitoring the hop-in chat, so feel free to stick your questions in there and we'll pull them out. But otherwise, I've got a few questions for each of you. I'll ask you directly, but if everyone else would like to chime in, we can just have a bit of an open conversation. Lisa, I want to start with you. You just mentioned, these in-game virtual economies, they're like digital nations. Some of them, the value that is being exchanged in there is parallel to some small countries around the world. So, we're also seeing a lot of people spend increasing amounts of time in there, and some people even looking to earn an income. So there's a lot at stake, and there's also a lot of criticism in this space too. So I wanted to ask you, what do you think is lacking in the way that the tokenomics for blockchain game projects is currently designed? And, what do you think are some of the most important things that game designers should be considering when building out these economies?
That's a very good question, because actually one thing, if I could ask Sir Jonathan later, what is his opinion on the difference between Web 2 and Web 3 games? So how I look at Web 3 games is that it's not that different from Web 2 games. It's just that it increases the opportunity cost of holding a virtual asset. What does that mean? Because we've got assets today that you can trade it on the secondary market very easily, as opposed to using these assets only within the game. So if you have skins in World of Warcraft, you can only spend it in World of Warcraft. Whereas if you have skins in Axie Infinity today, or you have some assets in additional assets in another space, you can always liquidate them and get returns today. So one very, very important thing is balancing the opportunity cost between liquidating your assets right now versus holding it in the long run to get your expected returns in the long run. And people are short-term focused, so people are more likely to want to liquidate it today than hold it for a long run. And how does that bring into the context of game economies? How do we build game economies? How do we build sustainable game economies from there? You mentioned tokenization, and tokenization is a very interesting tool and mechanism to take these assets and commoditize it so that we can trade with people. However, you don't tokenize things for the sake of tokenizing. There needs to be a reason for these tokens to exist. There needs to be actual utility. There needs to be a way to generate long-term value so that people are not just liquidating it today. And you see that in one of these problems of these games in the Web3 space in general. You've got simple games, idle games, and you've got really complex games. And a lot of value can be generated, can be created through complex systems, through complex economies, through complex interactions within the system. And during these complex interactions, you're actually creating a lot of value. So how do we, every system, every ecosystem, every country, you're creating a lot of value. You've got entrepreneurs starting businesses, that's your UGC. You've got governance dictating what can and cannot be done in the system. And you've got tokens facilitating that trade, makes it easier to trade with different people. And how do we build the right kind of system to allocate and distribute resources to allow value creation to keep going and not be extracting value, where the first ones in get a lot and the last ones in, they just don't earn at all.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I think one of the aspects too that fascinates me is this challenge of being able to develop a game economy that's strengthened against things like secondary market speculation too. But you asked a great question of Sir Jonathan. Maybe you can just explain to us, what is the difference between a Web 2 game and a Web 3 game, in your opinion, Sir Jonathan?
Yeah, there are a couple of different perspectives to this. First of all, and the best thing about Web3 in a way is, first of all, transparency. So let's say you take a usual Web2 loot box, right, from League of Legends or pretty much any game that offers it. What we're trying to do is actually offer that through smart contracts, and based on the Bitcoin VRF, you can actually build loot boxes that are decentralized. So then users and players no longer need to trust anyone for that, because it's everything on the blockchain. So transparency, first of all. And what we're also trying to do is kind of eliminate the risk of tokens, because even as we've seen with Axie Infinity and the big theft, so to say, that happened, roughly $600 million, right? What we're trying to do is implement Bitcoin directly into Web3 gaming. And through that, there would be no risks of breaching and all of that. So yeah.
Rodrigo, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
I guess from our perspective, I mean, the biggest difference between Web 2 and Web 3 is ownership of assets. And in Web 3, you have more, as a player, you have a lot more ownership. You don't actually have perfect ownership, because you're still depending on the game company to make the assets that you own mean something. But you do have a lot more ownership, a lot more freedom to trade assets any way that you want, versus in Web 2, you're entirely at the mercy of the developer. Some of that is technological. Some of that is also just kind of like a cultural thing. Like in Web3 in general, we believe in decentralization and in giving people the freedom to trade assets and do kind of whatever they want with them. In the Web2 world, there's a kind of a cultural thing where it's a lot more of the walled garden approach. But that to us is the big difference between Web2 and Web3. But that does open up a lot of possibilities when you're designing a game. If players actually have ownership of their assets, there's interesting things and interesting dynamics that you can kind of design for, or at least try to design for, that you really can't in Web 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, go
I think I have a few things to add.
Yeah,
so
please do.
I think the first one is, which is very interesting, where one of the beautiful things about Web3 is that everything's on chain. So by that, you will imagine that you can be tracking a lot of stuff, especially when it comes to maintaining the economy and sustaining the economy with more data points. Imagine the government having all the data points of how people spend their money, how people interact with each other, how frequently they spend the money, and you can create beautiful monetary policy that is more reflective of what the economy is doing. However, we've been doing this for a few months now, and we're building, because we built these economies. And one of the key things is that anyone can build economies. Some are better than others. But the key thing to any economy is maintaining it. It's very hard to maintain. And you need data points, right? So going back to data points, yes, the beautiful thing about Web3 is that everything is on-chain. But the truth is that not everything is on-chain. Just now you mentioned about smart contracts being on-chain, and all these different assets and different interactions are governed by smart contracts. But in a lot of AAA clients that we work with and help them to build, most of the things are actually off-chain, because it's still so expensive to have every single transaction on-chain. And right now we're building a big analytics for one of these fully on-chain companies. And one of the problems that we are facing is that they're not willing to give us the smart contract, which, by default, you're supposed to, it's open, it's open source, people can have access to it, but they just would not give it to us. And they say that it's proprietary and you can't track anything. So yes, we have all the data available, but you can't make sense of the data. And that's the thing about data, right? If data is the new oil, but we don't know what to do with oil, we don't know that it can run cars, we don't know that it can make plastic, oil is pointless. So there's so much data available in the Web3 space, but unless we know what it means, what kind of smart contracts attached to it, it's really hard to figure that out. So that's one. The second thing is that, yes, Web3 is really fun. You can build a lot of interesting economies, but it's also a lot harder to maintain, especially when you're talking about, play to earn instead of play and earn. If your goal is the play part and not the earn part, then you're adversely selecting for the wrong kind of people coming into your economy, which we call value extractors. So think of the colonial masters going in, extracting value, taking commodities from Indonesia, and the Dutch goes back to the Netherlands and make lots of profits. These are value extracting. And you see that a lot in simple games that are being built today, and quick and easy games that are built today. It's, come in, we pump up a lot, you have a lot of inflation, we make the game simple but fun enough for people to come in, and you just keep inflating through whatever kind of token allocation. We see that very often in all these games that are being built, but these are not sustainable, these are not robust. So that brings me to my third point, which is the key thing in Web3 space, you have it in Web2 as well, is you have to focus on gameplay. Game economy is interesting, but gameplay is key. If you look at Axie Infinity, more than 25% of people are in the game because they're interested in game economy, as opposed to all the other factors are less than 15% of people's interest. So you see that it adversely selects for the wrong people coming into the game, which is just value extracting. If I can go into this game because I can make higher than minimum wage in my country, then I'll be in this game until it stops giving me that return, and I'll leave. So it's almost like taking sheep, going to a pasture, eating all the grass, and once the grass is gone, you go to the next pasture. And what are we doing over here? We're not creating value. We're not generating something useful for everyone. We're not using this technology to make real change in the future that we want to build. So the conversation, at least when we speak to our AAA clients, is that you need to focus on gameplay, and you need to make sure that it's exciting, and you need to make sure that this entire economy and system you're building is there to attract people to the game, and there for people to want to play the game. There will always be people who are speculating. There will always be people who are, it's the secondary market or even the primary market is trying to earn returns, but that can be your biggest community. And that biggest community is a reflection, that behavior is a reflection of incentives you put in place. So how do you build the right incentives, which is your economics, that is reflective of your main objective of your gameplay?
Yeah, there's so many things that I want to pick up on there. That was amazing. Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how this conversation has evolved around like play to earn, play and earn. When we made our documentary, it was around December 2020. And I remember back then, like no one was really even talking about NFTs, let alone play to earn. But a couple of months later, people sold their, $69 million everyday's piece, and suddenly the whole world was like so excited about NFTs. But back then, it just reminds me how nascent this industry is. I think Axie Infinity launched around like 2018, I think on a $1.5 million seed. And it was sort of, the first thing after CryptoKitties that became quite popular in this space. And I do think I'm very excited to see how it's evolving and how these games are becoming more complex, more fun, because this space is just so early compared to some of these AAA games, that take sometimes 7 years to create, hundreds of millions of dollars, literally the best gaming talent in the whole world with decades of experience. So I think there's a long way to go. We need people like everyone on the panel today who are working on, developing this space to become its own category. But I wanted to dig into that play to earn versus play and earn idea. Rodrigo, where you're coming from, because you've got a background in sort of Web2 gaming, right? I'd love to know how you approach this and how you see it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Lisa said, that gameplay comes first. I mean, we see this as an enhancement to gaming. This is not a new type of gaming. This is a way of making games better for certain audiences that are interested in that. I think there's going to be a lot of audiences that don't really care. They're not financial speculators. They don't sit around with a spreadsheet tracking their investments. They just want to play a fun game. They're not going to care at all about NFTs, and they shouldn't. And so you shouldn't force any of that on them. There are people who will see that it is an interesting way and a more efficient way of owning assets that maybe maintain their value. Maybe they go up in value. Maybe they lose a little value, but you don't lose everything. So you can have gamers who, right now, if you make an investment in a game, let's say you're playing some MMO and you're buying a character, and a year later, you're tired of playing that character. Well, there's nothing you can really do with it, except for maybe go on eBay and sell your account. In Web3, we have a very easy and safe way of saying, okay, that character maybe still has some value. You can sell it. Maybe it gain value. You can sell it. For some gamers, that will be interesting. But fundamentally, you have to make a game first, and the game just has to be good. A lot of the projects that we've seen up until now have been token first, game second, and that's obviously not going to work. I mean, I think that's been, that should have been very clear from the beginning that this is a great idea, guys. What are you going to do when the treasury runs out? Then what? You're emitting tokens out of your treasury. You have a fixed supply. What's going to happen next, right? So how are you going to get revenue coming in so you can keep paying out rewards. And that's not an easy thing to solve for, especially if the game isn't fun. So first and foremost, you make a fun game and then you design an economy around it that's simple, that has to enhance gameplay. It has to make the game more fun or better for certain classes of people that are interested in that sort of thing. But the focus has to be on the game and gameplay. It cannot be about NFTs and tokens. So I think that in our space, people get too caught up in the technology. The technology is very, very cool. We believe the technology should be invisible. No one cares outside of our little bubble. No one cares, honestly, which blockchain you're on. No one cares about this or the other. They want to play a fun game. They bought an asset. They want to trade the asset. That's it. So we see the blockchain as TCP/IP. No one's going to care about which blockchain you're on, how the technology works. The blockchain needs to become invisible. And just people need to know that it's secure. I can buy an asset. I can trade it. It's safe and secure. That's all they care about. That's like the majority of gamers. Of course, there's going to be people that really get into the technology, but that's going to be a very small minority.
Yeah. Actually, one question I would like to ask. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Fess.
I think the main point of this is like, don't sacrifice the quality of Web2 gaming and the graphics and everything just for the Web3 benefits. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, can I just ask a follow-up question to that? One of the criticisms I hear all the time is people call play-to-earn games, blockchain games, a Ponzi. And do you think it's because it's sort of currently relying on that endless inflow of assets, new people coming into the game? If we can solve for the gameplay aspect of it, will that fix it? Or is that just going to be something that people are always going to criticize these games for because they have a financial aspect?
And from my perspective, a lot of them are Ponzi's. So, I think it's a fair criticism. So, there's ways of making games that are not Ponzi's, but it's very, very difficult and it's going to take a long time. And you have to come up with, first of all, you have to have a reason for people to pay you money, because there has to be money coming into the ecosystem for you to pay out rewards in the long term. Token treasury can only be a bootstrapping method, but you cannot rely on it. So maybe say, okay, here's how we're going to gain new users for a little bit of time. We're going to make it really attractive for early people to come in and play the game. But you can't rely on that. Eventually, it's like, how are we going to have a sustainable business model where people are paying us money to play the game, and out of that revenue, we can pay out certain rewards or do something with assets that's attractive to people. So it's really a refinement of current Web2 business models. It's not a totally, it is going to change the economics, and it is a big change, but business is still business. People have to pay you money. You have to make a profit, and then you can pay out some rewards from that. There's just no way around it. There's no like magic sauce of like, oh, listen, we can just generate tokens out of thin air. It's going to last for a little bit of time, but that is, and any game that relies on that is a Ponzi. And unfortunately, from my perspective, there's a lot of those.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a very interesting difference between Ponzi and growth hacking. And there is a lot of similar ideas, right? Where you bring more people in, and it's part of growth. But if you bring people in to extract value from them instead of creating value with them, that's Ponzi. A lot of the games that we see today, most of them are Ponzi. And good games require, as everyone has mentioned so far, good games require time to grow. And so while it's growing and you are attracting your community, your talent, and your people to contribute when the game is up and running, that's part of growth hacking. It does not necessarily mean that that's Ponzi just because you're distributing tokens as an incentive to get people to your community.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like the way that we look at it is basically, you can use, Web3 is like a fantastic technology that you could use to reward your early backers, essentially. But it's like a gift to your early backers, but you can't rely on that. That's just like, okay, that gives you a year, 2 years, whatever it is. But it's like, you got to get to like a real business model, quick, but you can reward the people that believed in you from the beginning. That's how we see it.
So Jonathan, did you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, regarding tokenization, there's this thing like for us to be talking about new tokens and everything, it seems so simple and easy. But if you want to onboard new people, creating a new token for each new game with different characteristics, it's not going to work, and we're not going to end up anywhere if we want mass adoption to this. So pretty much the key to it, and I'm not just trying to say that what we're doing is the most exceptional thing, but I think simplicity is key. And that, for example, for our proof of concept game, you're going to be able to utilize Bitcoin as an in-game currency. And what I'm trying to achieve or say by this is that people should not have a problem when it comes to learning about the tokenomics of a game. That's not, they just want to come and play the game. They don't want to go there and study 3 hours about how does this token work and what if its price is going to collapse 50% the next day, right?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. Just quickly too, we've only got about 9 minutes left. So do drop your questions in the chat. Shout out to Christopher Perceptions, who said he's loving the crash course in economics. You just mentioned, people don't want to spend hours and hours having to consume this content and figure out, the tokenomics of every single game and, whether it's risky or not. So what role do you think education plays in this space? And the reason I ask is because, particularly where I'm based in the Philippines, we have seen that a lot of people being onboarded to these games are learning very advanced skills and knowledge simply by interacting with these token economies or having to use Web3 tools. So I think in terms of improving digital literacy, financial literacy, there's huge benefits to be had there. But I also totally agree, like people don't have time to be sitting there, consuming white papers just when they want to play a cute, fun game. So, what's your take on in terms of education? Like how important or critical is that for people who are coming into this space? So Jonathan?
Yes. It's funny because we're actually in contact with CityPacks. They are a cool project from Miami. And what we're trying to achieve with our game is actually, because we're mainly focused on smart contracts, right? And games are a really fun way for kids to be learning cool stuff about not necessarily cryptocurrencies, but Web3 and the tech behind it. So games are an extremely useful way to attract children's and students' attention to learning, because there are lots of opportunities. Like comparing from Web3 to Web2, even the salaries are way bigger, way more opportunities for upgrowing talent. So in my opinion, games are one of the best ways to gain attention for children to learn it. Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I just had some technical issues going between stages. Thank you for your thoughts on education. Lisa, Rodrigo, did you have anything to add to that?
The only thing that I would say is I guess, there's going to be different types of games that go for different audiences. And maybe some games are going to say, listen, this is all NFTs, all tokens, and you got to get into the details and read the white paper, et cetera. And I'm sure there's going to be a market for that, and that's fine. We want to bring on mainstream users. And so the way that we look at it is that there's a lot of gamers that they just don't care about necessarily NFTs or a token. So you don't force it onto them. So it's like, NFTs and a token are there for the class of user that is interested in that, and then they can dive in and maybe it unlocks different gameplay possibilities and things like that. But it's not, you don't force it on people, right? So it's like you can play the game like as if you're a Web2 gamer, just have fun, just like you always did, and not even have to care about the blockchain side of things. But if you really want to get into the details of, oh, there's a token, what does it do? Well, here's what it does. Here's how it can make the game better. It can unlock this, this, and this for you. Okay, cool. Then I want to get into it. Maybe they get into it 3 months into playing the game or 6 months into playing the game, because now they've made a time investment. They're having fun and saying, I actually want to get more in depth into this game. A token can do a lot of interesting things to really unlock that next level of like stickiness with a player. But it's from our perspective, a mistake to force that onto players too early.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. And I think I've got two things to add. One is the power of guilds. And one is when we talk about education, it's not just the end users, but also the entire community as a whole, which includes the developers, UGC, and all these kind of stuff. So I think right now, when we look at guilds and the economics of guilds just seem like a shepherd having all your sheep together, going to pastures to consume. And I think guilds can be very powerful if you are doing education in this process, right? What is the monetary policy of this game versus the other game versus the third game? And how can be reflected in how communities work or how governments work and how social enterprises work? How are the economics different? Because it's very reflective in a kind of different economies and countries of these different games. So that I think guilds can play a very important role here. The second is education. It's not just about the end users, but the developers, the community, the builders, the UGC. It's not, because this is decentralized live growing system. not just the core developers doing that, but everyone coming in to build that together. And that education, I think, will be very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this space is moving so quickly as well. I mean, particularly to just see how much VC funding has flowed in over the past 18 months. I'm excited to see how it continues to build out. And I think, as you say too, we do need education for every player in the ecosystem. We've got a question from the audience here. I think it's a great way to actually sort of pull it together because we've only got 4 minutes left. So they're just saying, is it fair to say then, having heard everything that everyone's discussed today, crypto doesn't make the game attractive at all, it just enhances it with ownership benefits? Perhaps each of you could respond to that to say whether you agree or not, and maybe some final thoughts. I think that's all we're going to have time for. Rodrigo, do you want to go first? Is it fair to say?
Totally agree with that. I mean, like you can't just say, here's a game now with crypto. Like, who cares? Like, why? If I'm a gamer, why do I care about that? Crypto has to do something useful and practical, and has to make the game better and more fun. And it's not going to be for everyone, but there is a class of gamer that really want to get into, they love the game. They want to get into the details. You can use NFTs and an economy to kind of take it to the next level for that class of gamer. And I think that class of gamer is going to grow over time, and they're going to pick games that they really like and they really get into it. And then they really take part in the whole environment and economy of the game. That is going to happen, but it's like another layer of utility, let's say, to a good game. But the game has to come first. A lot of people probably won't even get into the blockchain side of things for quite a while. The people that do, then you make the game better for them in certain ways as you design gameplay in the economy.
I've got a very different perspective, so I want Sir Jonathan to say first.
No. You can go on. I'll be the last. It's fine.
All right. So I'm not a gamer, right? I mean, I'm not a game developer. I'm not building a game, and I'm an economist. So from the perspective of an economist, I love games because it's a very complex system. And what does that mean? It's a reflection of what a country can do. And how I look at games, it's a mini world, a mini model with, insane amount of stochastic like you can do all kinds of Monte Carlo and stochastic modeling. You just cannot get the predictability or unpredictability that games can produce. So as an economist, I'm very, very interested in understanding and measuring the various policies in place and its effectiveness in generating and creating value as an economy. What does that mean? It means that once we can measure the efficiency of different policies in place, you can start going to government and saying that, in this game, in this size game, that size game, and like huge size games, these are the various things that could work, could not work, because we can model human behaviors. Games are the perfect natural experiment in which we can test the efficiency of these policies in place. And that is beautiful. Imagine having a big data set of how efficient we can run different systems, run different countries, run different networks, and giving the monetary policy guys or giving the federal government an insight to how you could run things differently, looking at creative, financial engineering, creative monetary policy, everything that we experiment in the DeFi space can now be integrated in building very complex systems and networks. And then it can just be a small experiment to what the big picture is, to what kind of future we can build as proper countries working together. I think that's just beautiful.
Yeah, that's an amazing take. And also even creating digital nations, potentially, borderless organizations as well. Two very different takes there. What's your take, Jonathan?
I'm going to summarize this with one sentence or two. Crypto, I like to see crypto as a thing for traders, investors, and holders. What makes Web3 gaming beautiful is the benefits that it takes from the blockchain's utilities. So it's mainly the blockchain and using it rather than cryptocurrencies just making it fun, because nobody's playing the game. I'm playing this game. Maybe the currency is going to go up 10 times in 1 year. Then you're just an investor. You're a trader. You're not a gamer anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up beautifully. It sort of reminds me going back to 2017 where people were saying blockchain was a solution looking for a problem to solve. So it's less about sort of jamming the technology down people's throats and actually focusing on making a great game. Thank you so much, guys. Amazing conversation. We're going to go straight back to Kyle. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you too.
Thank you, everybody. What an exciting panel. I think one of the big takeaways I wrote down after that was about education and how education is not just about users, but about the whole community that goes into your game, whether that be on the developer side, the user side, everybody plays a role in that community. And also keep things simple. Users won't always want to read and go deep diving into your tokenomics. With that being said, let's transition over to our next panel. We're going to look at engaging to earn from FitnessFi to urban growth. With that, I want to welcome up our next panel, Shiti, Forever, Andre, and our moderator, Alex. Over to you.
Thanks, Kyle. This is okay. Thanks, Kyle. What a nice welcome and beautiful music here. So my name is Alex Chizik. I'm the head of listings at OKCoin, and love listening to these panels. And this next one should be very good because aside, or I should say, in addition to doing various activities for crypto, there's an underlying thread in this next panel and all the projects that these panelists are creating. And that's, kind of making crypto real and actually having a lot of social impact with crypto, which is quite different than, some of the stuff that I see in my day-to-day as part of listings of projects and speculation and crypto bros and moon boys. And maybe that's stuff of months ago. But now that we're a little bit in of a bear market or a slowdown, it's time to build actual projects. So why don't we go around the video camera here? We'll start with Shiti, and why don't we just introduce your projects, and then I'll ask you some questions and we'll jump in. So Shiti, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go to Forever and then Andre.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Alex. So pleased to be here. My name is Shiti, and I am Chief Marketing Officer at StepIn. So what's StepIn? StepIn is a Web3 lifestyle app where users can download the app from App Store and purchase an NFT sneaker, and then use that to walk, jog, or run and earn incentives in NFTs, token rewards. At the moment, we are tracking at 800,000 daily active users and over 3 million monthly users. And we very proudly claim to have introduced this behavior change in people, where now we have extraordinary retention rates. Therefore, fructifying our mission of nudging millions to healthy lifestyle while connecting them to Web3, in addition to positively contributing towards carbon neutrality.
Awesome, fantastic. Forever, why don't we turn to you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Pio. I'm CEO of Forever. Forever builds social games for healthy habits. So we started with a steps competition between two cities, Miami and New York City. And that was widely successful. We had 20,000 people join in less than a month and log about 500 million steps. And this is just a start. Our next game is going to be even more fun. Thank you.
And last but not least, Andre.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm a core contributor at CityCoins. CityCoins is really an open source ecosystem that allows anyone to take ownership in their city. And so, what do I mean by that? Well, by taking ownership, we really mean that CityCoins allows anyone to trade a city really the way that they would trade a stock, and share in the value that Web3 can provide to cities and their residents. But it also has kind of like a double meaning. So, it really empowers people to become more civically engaged and providing the right sorts of incentives for people to really start to participate in their city and in their community in new ways. And so I lead a lot of our community growth and ecosystem initiatives here, working with cities to figure out how to drive adoption for their city coin and build utility. I also lead the CityCoins governance working groups, where we're exploring new models of governance to structure a CityCoins DAO that should provide more of a voice to the community and more autonomy over the overall direction of the protocol. And just a quick background, before this, I was the head of business development at Zcash, so also really passionate about
privacy and zero knowledge technologies, and have been in the crypto space for around 5 years now. So yeah, excited to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
So maybe the first question I'll start off with, and we'll go right back to you, Andre, is I asked a lot of tokens this question. It's like, why crypto? A lot of these use cases, walking or competitions, city coins, and being able to support your civic leaders, in this case for city coins, you can do without crypto, right? I can donate to a politician. I can create a walking competition with my friends. I can give away, NFTs and prizes just on a regular Web2 startup. So it's important to understand why crypto. How do you all ground your use cases within crypto, within blockchain, and why is that the integral missing piece, the secret sauce, if you will, for what you guys are doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So at its most basic level, crypto allows you to coordinate community and capital in new ways. And so it's really providing the technology infrastructure and the incentive models for people to coordinate with each other at scale with people that they don't know or don't necessarily even trust. And so we're really bringing this model to communities to figure out how we can incentivize behavior and really align the incentives, in our case, between cities and their residents and the communities that make them up. And so, even at a meta level, we're using this new model of coordination to explore new methods of governance. And so, as part of that process, it includes things like how are things like power and wealth even distributed in a system like this? And, I think that Citycoins is in a position where we're able to really start to examine the ways that communities are interacting with each other and their cities, and hopefully be able to develop a system that is more equitable, more transparent, and more inclusive by using these sorts of open networks in order to facilitate that governance. And so, yeah, I think that we're in a position to ensure that community voices are being heard, and it really comes down to this foundational trust layer that we have to coordinate people in new ways.
Yeah, fantastic. Pio, what about you? How are you guys doing this at Forever?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question. So I think, at the core, really, what we're doing and the principle of why we're building this is data ownership, right? So as we, Web 2, versus Web 3 is how do you, get to capture some of the value that's created from the data that you're authoring. And especially in terms of, projects like ours, where, we're just starting with steps, right? But a lot more types of data are going to be coming into our platform. And at that point, it's your health data, for example. And so then, the question becomes, how do you participate in the capture of the value that's been created by this data? And because it's a network, it's a community, it's not just you authoring this data, right? But it's other people authoring this data. So there's a certain amount of value being created here that the community is generating. And so we think that Web3 is this novel model where we can, participate as participants authoring this data. We can participate in the capturing in some way this data, the value of this data down the road.
Stepping on over to Shiti. Shiti, how about you guys?
We get asked this question left, right, and center, that why are we building a fitness app on blockchain? And it's a fair one, to be honest. And the answer is also pretty simple and straightforward. There are 4 key benefits. 1, incentives. 2nd, ownership in form of NFTs. 3rd, tokenomics. And 4th, network effects. Let me double click very quickly on each of them. So the first one, which is incentives, they are sort of the triggers to enter into the ecosystem. Humans are just wired to lay back on the couch, not actively walk outside. We're wired to eat cake and sugar and not to eat healthy greens. So we need to tell ourselves the stories, philosophy, willpower, or incentives. To each his own. They're just one of the many things that one can do. And blockchain allows that to be done in a fair, square manner. The second one is ownership. I think Pio and Andre both have talked about it. So, of course, NFTs allow for ownership of your data assets in a way that hasn't happened at this scale before. You could play Fortnite for hours and hours, and the worst or best, depending on how you look at it, is you could hope to go on a dark corner of dark web and sell it. But now there's a frictionless, easy way to have real world impact from what you own, much like in STEPN. People actually incentivize themselves with a cup of coffee, with a GST they earn in the walk. The third is tokenomics, and that really is sort of like this bootstrap mechanism, which hasn't existed before. So unless you're willing to pay millions of dollars in marketing, which not many startups like us have in the start. And last but not the least, network effects, because of community that Andre's spoken about, that gets created through health, wealth, physical impact that the app creates. There's a passionate, loyal, engaged community that believes in the ecosystem and the value and believes in locking it in. So I don't think any of these values can be replicated if not on blockchain.
So maybe a follow-up question to you. You mentioned community, and community is very important. To me, I look at community in two ways. One, as a proxy for demand for whatever the product is. In this case, the stepping product or the health exercise product. And the second is a voice or signals from the crowds, literally, right, about what product features to add, how to evolve the app. So talk a little bit about how do you grow your communities? What has there been any tactics that you've used? And we're all going to say our communities are very important to us. That's fairly obvious. But going a click beyond that, how do you engage the community in such a way that converts them from fans to very loyal fans, to sticky fans, to then evangelizers of the protocols, really? So how do you convert those? How do you view the communities? How do you engage them in order to keep that machine going?
Yeah. So prior to this, I had my own AI startup where we did posture correction for fitness. So I've got some experience with fitness in tech, and I'd speak to that first. One thing that really, really drives fitness business is retention. How many users come to your app again and again and again? So what drives retention, especially in fitness? Results. Nothing drives fitness as results. So if, say, you've joined a gym to lose weight and you start to lose weight in 2 weeks, you will come back. You will come back. And if you don't, you will not come back. And what drives results are the incentives, triggers, social, physical parameters. In case of STEPN, we have had extraordinary retention. And part of the reason we believe is because it is happening in social settings. So there's a website called stepnworld.com, which is completely driven by community. We have nothing to do with it. And as we speak, there are events that are happening in Athens, Korea, New York, Miami, Japan, Taipei, cities across the world. And when you go to one of these events, as I did in the UK, there's not just this 20 to 44 crypto native male that comes, their wives, their spouses, their partners, their babies in the pram, their children, young ones, pets. And it is super heartening. I mean, I can't say enough on that this is nothing like dystopian myth that is being painted out to be like a Ready Player One scenario. And when people find themselves in such a social setting, it is hard not to be passionate and loyal and community driven. So that is STEPN story.
Wait, did you say there are pets that come on? Are you guys like Crypto Kitties 2.0? Is this the real Crypto Kitties that you guys have?
Would love that. No, but we see dogs more often than kitties, to be honest.
Crypto dogs. So Crypto Kitties was sold 2017 or 2018 or whenever that was. Why don't we jump to Andre? Because look, you are the community manager, and Citicoins is all about the community. And then we'll come back to Pio and again on the fitness side. But so how do you think about the community, Andre? Are you doing the same thing? And especially about Citicoins, because Citicoins, it's a very decentralized model by nature of what it is. There is a foundation, but it's probably the most decentralized model other than Bitcoin that I've seen in the space in terms of how it operates. So how the heck do you guys wrangle everyone and get people excited and grow the following?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's interesting. I think that there are kind of two questions here. I can kind of answer both of them separately. So, the first one that I hear is really like, how do you build community? And the second is, more so like how do you build demand for your product? And there's a lot of overlap there, but with some nuance. So I'll start with community first. So the first step for building community is awareness, right? So how are people discovering your project? I think that CityCoins is in a unique position because we deal at the intersection of politics. For better or worse, we get a lot of organic press. Journalists love to write about us. So it's really easy for people to discover our project. But then the question becomes, how do we keep them engaged and retain them, as Shiti was mentioning? And there's a few strategies that we've employed to specifically target this. So, really thinking about how are we working in public? So when you go to the CityCoins community, everything is open sourced. You can see all of our meetings and call logs and everything like that. So it's really easy for people to participate. We host several community calls every week that are based on different working groups. So really whatever you're passionate about, whatever your interests are, there are ways for you to provide value and contribute in the community. And so, really looking for those ways for people to engage deeper and, look for opportunities to get more involved in the project. So that's really I think a key part of building community. And as Shiti mentioned, also building inclusive communities. We're really looking at ways, given our relationships with governments, that we can reach people that haven't really engaged in crypto so far. So that's one of the unique things, is that we're able to really give a voice to more underrepresented groups and communities that are maybe discovering crypto for the first time because they're interested in understanding what their city's chain is all about. And so, the second part of the question is, how do you start to build demand for this product? And, I think that we are really looking at things from a very product-driven approach. So, how do you identify the target audience and users of your product? And really, what are the features, the user experience, and products that are needed to really address those needs that people are having? So we've really been looking at, what are the problems that people are actually experiencing in their communities, and how can we develop solutions, and how can Web3 specifically develop solutions to begin to address those? And then we kind of go through that marketing funnel that I just talked about.
Awesome, thanks. So Pio, what about you guys?
Yeah, so, again, just to, echo a couple of points that were already made, we think that, how do you build a community? You build a great product. And in our case, we built an engaging product. But in the end, the product that we're building is helping people become healthier, right? And so we essentially think that people become our ambassadors, right? So once, and it's hard, I'm not saying it's easy, but that's where we're really trying hard to build a great product for you to form a healthy long-term habit, right? But once you do that, then you sort of become the ambassador for that product. So that's how we see, really. We're not looking to build a product where it's all about high scores and have I taken 200,000 steps a day? That's crazy. You have to run for many miles. But as long as you consistently,
that's a real proof of work, by the way.
I know, right?
Run 200 miles, get some coins.
But in the end, we don't actually think it's that healthy, right? So the way we really think about our product is the consistency over high scores. And again, it takes time, for a person to form a healthy habit. But once they form a healthy habit, we become basically their best friend, and that's how they spread the message, right? And sort of become our ambassador, right? So that's sort of one side of it. The other side of it, I just wanted to touch upon the government and the sort of the civic duty. And we think as we grow our platform, we could become sort of this health data dashboard for a city, right? And essentially help the city government to even start, just because it's even today it's very hard to gauge effectiveness of policies. For example, I set up a new park as a government. I'm going to build this new park. Is it really helping my citizens? Is it helping their health? So as we and this is where crypto comes. This is where Web3, your data ownership, the fact that you can connect your health data anonymously, right? You don't have to share your real identity. Then we become, essentially a health data platform, anonymized health data platform for a city, right? And the government has a way to essentially gauge, how well certain, policies, how well the money they're spending on bike paths is really working out. So this is really the big vision, right, for us, is how we tie it into community, into the local local city.
Yeah, fantastic. And look, one of the follow-ups on grounding the projects and tying them in is actually tokenomics. You have to get those tokenomics right, and well, one, they foster continued participation. On the other hand, they can definitely be gamed, right? So have you guys seen any users gaming the system? And how do you think about tokenomics in a way that fosters the good behavior, right? But stops the bad behavior? And how long have you spent on tokenomics? Do you keep on refining it? Talk to us a little bit about that. Why don't we just continue with you, Pio, and what you guys are doing at Forever?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question, right? Because this space is so new, right, that no one really knows the perfect answer, right? Like, we're all learning and we're all sort of experimenting. But there's been a year or two or a couple of years of other projects designing their tokenomics. So the way we really think about this again is, how do we build in from the get-go ways where it's less of a trading, right? Like where it's less of an instant gratification and it's more on the delayed sort of gratification, right? So in our case, we're trying to design our tokenomics in such a way, first of all, that we can adjust, right? Like, so it's as much sort of like a continuous work of sort of adjustment, the certain parameters. But two, really build in, from the get-go, these sort of long-term, contracts where the longer, you participate, the more, gain at the end you have. And then the more sort of you engage in quick, short-term gains, that the less sort of you're incentivized by our tokenomics. So that's sort of a high level, I would say, description of how we approach this.
What about just passing it over? Thank you for that to Shiti, because you guys are very similar in terms of the topically similar projects. So how do you guys go about it, Shiti? How do you about your tokenomics, burn rate, and so on, in order to incentivize the behaviors that you'd like to incentivize?
Yeah, I mean, we have to absolutely take care of this. So, and actually, we're not the first ones. And when I say we, I mean like the Web3 fitness space, because all of Nike, Strava, Run Club, they've had this problem where people will try and gain the number of steps by shaking it on a bicycle, and so many creative ways to do that. So it is very, very important to us more than them, because we actually, the incentivization of the whole economy depends on that, isn't it? So it happens at two levels. One, that technology needs to be absolutely robust. So our anti-cheating models, in fact, are built using artificial intelligence, and we have deployed some really cutting-edge technology with autoencoders and outlier models to self-learn. And as our data grows, of course, with the user permissions, we're able to train the data better and better in detecting these mechanics. So we need to detect and dissect the cheating and manipulative behavior from mistakes. Like sometimes phone can get left behind in a car when somebody's not cheating, or using of multiple phones. So malicious behavior as opposed to anomalous behavior. Then behavior at scale. So farms, minting farms, and so they absolutely have to be stopped. So I think data and tech really helps here. And that is something that we deploy at STEPN. With the user count as large as we have, it absolutely becomes necessary to do that for us.
And what about, Andrew, what about City Coins? I know you technically haven't designed the tokenomics, but the community actually recently went from, at least the Miami coin and New York coin, from V1 to V2. So tokenomics actually have changed recently, voted on and enacted by the community. Talk to us a little bit about that, like why the change, and maybe how you rethought tokenomics midstream in order to support the community better.
Yeah, it's a great question. So Citycoins uses a model of tokenomics called proof of transfer light. And we basically learned that this model is really useful for bootstrapping communities and bootstrapping treasuries and earning capital as a function of that. I think the key thing that we've been thinking about as part of this process is how do we attract missionaries, not mercenaries? You know, and I think that this is to an extent something that we're seeing across the ecosystem, right? I think they spoke about it on the previous panel, but how do you design tokenomics in ways that are sustainable? And it's not just the people that are coming to yield farm and get the high yields and then they go on to the next project, but reinforce the actual behavior that you want to see inside the ecosystem. So, you know, can you earn tokens for, you know, doing something that's beneficial for your community, or, you know, what are the right things to optimize for there? Ultimately, we see it as iterative. So, you know, we did just ship a protocol upgrade just about a month ago, and this went through a process where the community was able to crowdsource some improvements and tweaks that we would like to see to the token economics. But you know, we're continuing to refine that and figure out the levers that we can pull to really optimize for the set of outcomes that we hope to see there.
Well, look, fantastic. I know we only have 5 minutes left. So if there are any questions from the audience, Kyle, if you don't mind just putting them in the chat. But in the meantime, why don't we do something a little bit more fun and put you guys in the hot seat? We'll go rapid fire responses. Why don't we go, what's the order we can do? We can do Shitty, women can go first. We'll go Andre and Pio in this order. So first rapid fire question. We'll need hot seat answers, guys. Hot seat answers like this. Biggest alpha, Discord or Telegram?
Twitter.
Where?
Twitter.
Twitter. Okay, good. Okay, we should add that. Discord, Telegram, or Twitter. Andre, what about for you?
Yeah, definitely Twitter. Yeah.
Okay. Pio?
Discord.
Okay. Discord. We got 2 for Twitter, one for Discord. All right, love it. Next question. Your biggest wish list, something that you, in terms of projects that you wish you could have feature or anything.
Sorry, you broke up there. Wish list for?
Wish list, product features, project features. If you had one wish for your projects, what would it be?
Yeah, so it is a wish list now, but we will implement it at some stage. So NFT integration with music for content creators.
Awesome. Okay. Andre?
Yeah, I'd also say NFTs. NFTs are a really great way to bootstrap communities. And I think of this as a really killer app for city coins that can be used to do things like fund public goods in your city, offer some exclusive membership benefits that allow you to experience your city in new ways, and offer new income streams for creators. So I'd love to see city coins become the go-to protocol for local artists and local communities to launch their NFTs.
All right, I love it. Pio, what about you?
Just more awareness, you know, for the amazing things you can do today, you know, with health data, right? Like health data is just such a trove of information, and like we have wearables today. We just have to learn better to use that data.
Cool. Okay, 2 more. One rapid fire one about someone else, one about you guys. Second to last one. Coolest crypto project out there that you like? It's not yours.
Without a doubt, step in. It has to be us.
Well, what about that? What about that? That's not yours. Anything else that you're paying attention to anywhere in the crypto space, stacks or otherwise?
See, nothing comes to the mind. And not being immodest, nothing comes to the mind. Right now, coolest, hottest, is step in.
Love it. Okay, Andre, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Gitcoin. So Gitcoin is a really interesting platform to fund public goods. They're built on Ethereum, but they've developed some really interesting models to distribute funds through quadratic voting. And they've, I think, really done a good job designing their governance structure. And so, yeah, they're doing really interesting things in that community. It's worth paying attention to them.
Awesome. And Pio, what about you?
I love what VitaDAO is doing, which is essentially a decentralized science platform for independent research labs to discover novel drugs or even repurpose existing drugs where there is no economic viability, meaning like a big pharma can't come in and monetize it at $1 billion value, but there's still insane amount of value that can be generated from it if we just run the clinical trials, right? And so that's just for humanity. It's just an amazing thing that platforms like VitaDAO, LabDAO, BioDAO can do.
Very cool. And the last thing, guys, just about your own, just tell the audience, where can people find you, websites? Just show your project, guys, in the last kind of 30 seconds here. Pio, we'll start with you. We'll go backwards.
It's very simple. I go to forever.today.
Oh, nice. That's a pretty sweet URL. I'm not gonna lie. Forever.today. You cannot forget it. All right. What about Andre? What about for you?
Yeah, I'd say come join the Discord. You can access it by going to citycoins.co. Follow us on Twitter at MindCityCoins, or you can stay in touch with me at Andre R. Serrano on Twitter.
Fantastic. And Nishiti, last but not least.
Yeah, our website is the best, stepin.com. But I also want to say we have a very detailed technical white paper. If that's too technical for you, there is a light paper. And there's always Twitter for upcoming alpha, like you said. And if you're more community person, then head over to Discord or Telegram.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you all three of you for joining the panel and giving such good alpha, both about your projects and about the space all up. And we'll turn it back over to Kyle.
Thanks, Alex. That was massively well done.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you, everybody. And Alex, thank you as well. Great panel, very exciting. I'm ready to engage and earn with all of that great knowledge. And as Alex mentioned, and all of our panelists spoke about the alpha. Where can you find alpha? Where's the best place? Telegram? Maybe for some. Twitter, as was noted, a ton on crypto Twitter, but also Discord. Discord was mentioned throughout the entire panel. All of us are in Discord. If you haven't done so already, make sure you have jumped into the Crash Punks Discord as well for the big Q&A session later this afternoon with Neal Stephenson. But while Discord's great, it's got a lot of alpha, there needs to be an alternative. That we need a new type of Discord, something for this next evolution of the web, being Web3. And that's what we're going to talk about next. And Chris has joined us from Council to talk to us about building your community on a new Web3 Discord.
Hey, everybody. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, everybody, for joining today. I am super excited to share with you Console and what we are bringing to Web3 communities. So in this chat, I'll give you a brief look at what we're creating with Console. Console is essentially Web3 Discord. I'll give you some sneak peeks at what we're building, a sense of the timeline, so that you can get involved. And I'll even give you at the end one thing you can do today if you are thinking of creating your community on Bitcoin. There's some tools that we're already putting out that you can get started with. So without further ado, let's jump into it. I'll also say that if you want to follow the project or any of this sounds interesting to you, on Twitter, Console DAO, C-O-N, just like that, S-O-L-E DAO. And you can follow all the updates. We'll have a lot of stuff coming out in the next few weeks, so check out for that. Okay, let's get into it. So I think, the reason I'm here and a lot of the presenters you're here, and maybe potentially you're here, is you're passionate about Web3, right? What does that mean, though? I think Web3 means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To me, when I think of Web3, it really ties into my own relationship with open source software, decentralization, working in public, a lot of these principles that are really important to me. And so I want to start by just outlining those principles, because it's really why I show up at a conference like this. Is really why I'm here talking with you. And it's why we built Console. And so it's going to all come together. So just starting with some of the principles promoting decentralization, we talk a lot about decentralization, right? When we make this choice to build on Web3. What does that actually mean? Well, it means a lot of different things. There can be anything from technical decentralization, the way that your code is structured, right? So that you, have some kind of ownership over your data, to like, we just heard from Andre and Citycoins, thinking about the way that governance is decentralized and how certain people in the group, there's leaderless, right? But in general, this idea of decentralization, I put it that the less we have to trust you, the more we trust you, right? Which is basically like, if we don't have to just trust one person, right? If we have a few people, or we have some more democracy, we can trust the organization, we can trust the group, right? So this is really important to us. And as I'll show you in a second, this is why we are working to build Console. The second would be user owned. So this comes up a lot about in the creator economy part of Web3. So you own your own data, right? You can have shared ownership in a project. If you have an NFT project or an art project, you can share that ownership and have all of these people come together, strangers, people you don't know from around the world, and support you, and also benefit from your journey and from your success, right? And be along for the ride, have some skin in the game. So this is also really important for Web3, right? I think we're all here and we're all excited about that. I also think working in public is really important. And this comes from the decades of open source. And it's even how we're here, right? Blockchains are public, they are transparent, and we can add to them, and you don't need permission, right? Anyone can join. And I think that's really important, as well as how we share ideas, right, is really important. And finally, a Web3 principle that's really important to me, I would just say, make a positive impact on the world. Now, I mean, this little nugget has been around for decades in Web 2 as well. But what I mean about it here specifically is really that Web 3 eventually needs to be more inclusive, so that it's not just tech people, right? So that it's not just, degens. But I really believe, like, at least, for me, what we're building can have this larger impact on government at large, right? On transparency of medical records, the way we work, play to earn, play to walk, play to learn. It's really influencing the larger world, right? So I put this together to share with you today because, these are the things that are on my mind of like why I show up in the morning to build what we're building. And I put it to you today because when I look out at the ways in which we're coming together, there's a bit of a gap, I'd say, in some of the tools we're using that don't really value the same values that we have. And they don't seem to also be adjusting with the things that we're trying to build. There's a dissonance, right? It's like, I feel it. You feel it? All right, let's feel it together for a second. I'm going to take you down a deep, dark path. Ready? I know you've been on Discord before. Kyle told me. We all know you're on Discord. I'm on Discord too. It's okay. It's okay sometimes. But then every now and then you're on Discord and you get some DMs from somebody who you don't know. And then, the next day on the news, just in the past week, there's been tons of hacks. There was a big one, I think it was just last Friday now, where the owners, essentially the main hack on Discord that happens is that people who you think you're talking to are not who you're talking to. The hacker will masquerade, take over someone's account and say, hey, it's me, I'm the owner of this group. And then, they're able to basically phish or steal NFTs by just kind of really just abusing trust. Like, trust is a lot of what we're talking about. And if, as a community, the community that you're building and that you want to build, you imagine that you can build, if in that community, you can't trust the people who you're working with, you can't really get anything done, right? Trust is a really important utility and a really important a value, right? I think to getting things done and to like bringing Web3 again beyond just like beyond this group here. I mean, we're innovating, but we're also small in the big picture of the world. Bringing this to the world, we need to figure out and crack trust, right? So that is the question. That is the thing of which kind of got me really excited to jam on last summer with some really smart people and put together Console. So yeah, Console is taking all of the principles of Web3 and making a platform that you and really, any decentralized community, any leaderless community, any community where shared ownership is important, where you can build your community. Let me give you a little tour. Okay. At the higher level, I would say there's three things it is. It's a chat platform with Web3 principles, and security is very important. So security is something we're paying a lot of attention to. And we're really also passionate about the design. We've put a lot of time into working on the design. Sorry, I'm just checking out the chat. Okay, we're all good. We're all good. Okay, let me go back. Yeah, so this is Console here, and what you can see is, yeah, essentially it looks a lot like a chat app that you may have seen, maybe something like Slack or Discord. But what you can't see here in this image is maybe more important than what you can see, because when you come to Console, everyone that you're chatting with has been verified because they own their identity. We're using decentralized identity on the blockchain, secured on Bitcoin. So using stacks to secure and insert that into the Bitcoin blockchain, so that if you're speaking with jiggle.btc, hi Jiggle, if you're out there. If you're speaking with Jiggle, you know it is who they are. I'm castig.btc, and I'm the only person that owns castig.btc. So if you are speaking with me there, because of the security of the blockchain, we're really able to use that and bring it to identity in the world. And that alone really, really empowers your community, because again, you don't have this problem which Discord has, and which a lot of social media has, Twitter, Facebook, where there's just multiple attacks. I mean, my DMs are filled with like 4 different Vitaliks, probably, maybe, I want to hope one of them is real, but they each keep shilling me some Ethereum Classic, and I don't know what that's about, so that's probably not true. Okay, let's move on with the show. So we have chat here, and the thing that you're not seeing is the verification. So let me show you what that looks like. Exciting news, Crash Funks, who is playing a big part in today's conference, is going to be the first community to come and close down their Discord. I think there was about 25,000 people in that Discord. Move over to Console. They're going to move over to Console when we launch later this summer. So very exciting. And this is what we're working on designing with them, that they can have different levels, is what you see here, a whitelist or different roles based on perhaps just owning membership in that community. So we're using NFTs as membership, as ownership of being part of a community, right? So that's that shared ownership model. We do that using the web wallet. So we're going to use the Hero wallet. In the future, we will also introduce other wallets of onboarding, hopefully Xverse at some point, and MetaMask. So we will broaden out, but we're definitely starting with Bitcoin DAOs and stacks first. We're very excited about that. And so, yeah, the main thing here to really emphasize, and that I don't think enough people are thinking about, is just the opportunity to use decentralized identity in a way to just reduce spam, scams, propaganda. And if you look at the way, there's a whole history of how Twitter is used to kind of just basically radicalize and polarize during elections. Decentralized identity is essentially, it's like basically Twitter's blue chip, but like you own it, and that's a really powerful thing. And we're really, really excited to be making use of that in our platform. A few more shots here. What you're seeing here with the Crash Funks community is really, we value putting community first. So we think of this as a platform for decentralized organizations, and definitely DAOs are part of that. But it's also, I imagine that if you're watching, you may think like, hey, at some point I want to become a DAO, or I want to make a DAO, but I don't know where to start. We have in our onboarding, like, we want to help you decentralize, and we want to help you organize. And so we recognize we've had, about 50 chats with tons of different people in the ecosystem, Ethereum and stacks and Bitcoin and all over, to really understand. And there's actually a range of decentralization, right? A lot of people will call themselves DAOs, but they're not like whatever the standard textbook definition of one thing is. We see that there's a range. And so Console is there to really help you. You can come to Console with your community, even if you just have your wallet. That's all you would need is your wallet to get on. But you don't necessarily even need an NFT collection yet. We can help you get that when you're ready. And then you can have your decentralized identity. From there, we'll have other tools to even further decentralize you. And I'll show a bit of those in a second. One thing that we're really excited about as well is focusing on reputation. So this is something that we'll work on a little bit over time, but pulling in data points of how users in your community, like the activity that they're doing, is a way to build their reputation. So yeah, reputation, if you know someone in your community is really active, it's a nice way to go beyond, hey, you've just bought my NFT, which is a great to get into the membership, right? It's like an investment or a membership. It's like a part there. But how do you reward or kind of even empower people in your community who are the people who are like doing a lot of the work? How do you make that visible? How do you make that more transparent, right? And so here you can see on the user screen, we can learn a lot about a certain member, right? When they joined, we can click and see their decentralized identity on the blockchain, right? So we got that security there. We can see their activity. Are they participating in votes, proposals? Are they active, right? And this just gives a bit more of a complete view of who the people are. We can filter, we can reward them, and really just try to come together and do amazing things, right? How do we bring people together? People who are often strangers, like I said, who you might not know. People who are sometimes are synonymous. We don't even know their name, but who just want to do something cool or do good or collaborate. How do we empower those people? So this is where we're at. This is pretty exciting. And so in closing, yeah, we want to help you build decentralized communities. And so if you're out there and you think you would like to join Console, we have a wait list right now. We will slowly be opening that up community by community. So you can go to Console DAO on Twitter to follow for updates on that. So check that out. You can reach out to me, Castig, on Twitter as well. Happy to help talk you through that. And I'd say in closing, my last two slides here, and then I'll hand it back to Kyle, would be, we do have some tools out there that we are helping create. We're thinking of them as modules that are composable. They're out there in the world. And the first one that we helped basically grant to build is called Multisafe. Completely separate little module, but this is a multi-sig that you can use for stacks, Miami coin, a variety of different tokens, and soon to be Bitcoin, that you can come together, pool money together, and create all the kinds of DAOs that you're seeing in Ethereum or Solana, Constitution DAO, Pleaser DAO. These kinds of things are now possible on the Bitcoin blockchain. So this is the first module, and over time, we will then incorporate that. You're seeing the future here, incorporate that into Console, but we're kind of doing things in a decentralized way as well. It's all open source, and over time, kind of linking these all together. So that's Console. Handing it back to Kyle. Here's our Twitter. Follow us. I would love to hear from you. And we're also hiring devs and designers and some awesome people. If that's something you'd like to collaborate with us on as well, I would love to hear from you. Okay, thanks so much.
Awesome. Well, Chris, don't go anywhere. We've got a lot of questions from the audience because it was such a great conversation and just explanation. I mean, you and I have spoken about Console and where things were going, kind of previewed it on the Stacks Crypto Internet Show. So we won't go to all the basics as you went through more today, and also announced Crash Punks going into Console as one of the first, which is super exciting as well. But you got a list of questions, my friend. I hope you're ready for these. So here we go. First and foremost, chat applications have the same problem as gaming, which we just spoke about: latency and storage latency. How is Console looking at addressing those needs for its users?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about latency in the chat app, I think, look, I'm here to learn from you guys as well. I think Discord does the latency, like the chat seems to be not slow. I haven't had that problem. If anything, sometimes it's like too much. But that's not, I would say, the problem that we're addressing. We're trying to give power back to the users and make it decentralized. And in doing that, that is maybe where the question comes of, the more that you decentralize, there are some trade-offs you have to start to make with the speed and stuff like that. And the real truth of it is like we are, I'd say, at the forefront of learning how to decentralize technology, like talking to everyone we need to talk to and bringing them on our team. And the real truth is that like a lot of the technology still isn't there to be fully decentralized. So we're going to have what's called just like a progressively decentralized approach. So in the beginning, decentralized identity, transactions of money, and voting will all be on chain. And that might take, to have those, it might be a bit of a delay, anything from like a few seconds to maybe even like a minute for transactions, right? Or even a few minutes for transactions. And that will get quicker over time with hyperchains coming to Stacks, which is going to make Stacks super quick. But the chat itself, will be instant. We're using a variety of solutions that are kind of like hybrid, decentralized, centralized at first to just kind of get this out there. So there shouldn't be any latency issues. We will be able to handle rooms of up to, I don't know, like 100,000 people. Like it won't be a problem.
Wow. Well, and there was a question, and I think you kind of touched on this in your explanation of you're going to move into full decentralization, right? It's a step-by-step process. And there was a question around expansion on your point around data storage backend. If maybe you want to touch a little bit further on how that will look, or maybe when that will come. Again, this is a process, as you mentioned.
Yeah. Is the question, where is our data going to be stored? Is that how?
Yeah, to maybe expand on that point that you made of that there would be a decentralized data storage backend.
Yeah. We at the moment we're using 3 different solutions. So like I said, we're using the Stacks blockchain for the identity, for the transactions, like for the smart contracts, like all of that stuff. And that's all transparent, open source, out there, decentralized, fully decentralized. The second is we're using IPFS for a few of the pieces. And then we are also using AWS mostly for the chat because of not the chat itself, but some of the things with caching and some of the things with storing some of the assets, basically. So that just because there are those speed issues that IPFS and that like the blockchain API just kind of can't handle at this moment. Like it's just the reality of where we're at.
So we've got 2 more questions, Chris, and we may go over a minute. So I want to make sure we get these in because they are very important. The first is, will there be a hosted subdomain registrar for users to create decentralized identity, without incurring a cost? Or is the cost part of the is a person verification?
That's a really cool question. It's something I've thought about. So for anyone watching, when you create a decentralized identity, like if you buy a .btc name, there is a cost to it. It's a few dollars, or maybe it's like 30 cents in gas. I think the 30 cents in wait, hold on. It's not necessary actually, because you can just sign. We'll have the ability to just sign with the wallet. So you can basically get into a community by just signing for free. The cost is really on the community's decision. It's if they want to gate it with an NFT, then that's where the cost comes from. And in a way, I think that is what helps keep the quality of the community up. So in short, it's really to the community if they want to charge. It's by default, we're not imposing a cost on them. Yeah.
We're turning this into a full whiteboard session. I mean, we need to start mapping this out. This is great. So last question for you, Chris. This comes from Jesse. Will the messages be encrypted using an account's public key? How would others decrypt those messages for each room? Will there be a shared key encryption? What would that strategy look like?
Yeah, I think what Jesse is referring to is end-to-end encryption. And if not, hit me up on Twitter. We could chat more about it. This is something, because we're still developing it and launching in about a month with our beta. This is something we're still debating, and this is something that everyone I think can learn from a bit, is the end-to-end encryption. We're looking to just maybe do that just in the DMs and just in private chat by default, but that the public rooms wouldn't have it. And the trade-off of that is when you enter a room, when someone's new, it's, do you want to have search history, right? And so if I want to walk into CrashFunks and be able to search, which is helpful for questions, support, reaching out to people, to search anything from before I came, technically you can't have end-to-end encryption in that room. So there's this trade-off of like usability and like transparency of data versus like privacy of data. And so we're thinking the DMs, privacy, and then encryption, basically signal level encryption. The public forums are essentially searchable and secure, but it wouldn't be end-to-end specifically. Like it wouldn't be that level of encryption. So
Great.
That's what we're at. And I would love to hear from anybody if they also have thoughts on how to, we're here to serve you guys. So let us know.
Well, good. I'll tell you, Jesse's a fan. Jesse's ready to get on the mic with you right now and whiteboard this out. So Jesse, definitely connect with Chris and the council team. Check out council.xyz as well. And Chris, thank you very much. We're looking forward to this migration of the Crash Punks community from Discord into Council soon, later this summer as well. So thank you very much. And with that, we want to welcome up our next panel as well as we start to shift into the culture of the metaverse. As we start to move into a more digitized future, a more digitized life, that culture that we all have from around the world and our backgrounds and everything, we want to bring that with us, or maybe we want to evolve it. What will it look like? How will we take internet culture and evolve that even further into the metaverse? Well, that's a little bit of what our next panel is going to be speaking about. Let me go ahead and welcome up Jason, our moderator, and also Anna Marie, Akbar, and Matthew.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. My name is Jason. I'm a reporter with Decrypt. And in this panel discussion, I'm going to be speaking with a few of the great minds in Web3 who are going to tell us about moving into a digital world and bringing more culture and more inclusivity into that world. So joining me today is Akbar with the People of Crypto, Anna Marie with the Verseverse, and Matthew with the Sandbox. Thank you, everyone, for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
All right, so let's go down the line and I'll have you introduce yourselves and give us a little bit about your backgrounds. Anna Marie, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Ana Maria Caballero. I am a Colombian-American poet. I've published in both Spanish and English. And I've always felt that the life of a published poem was just too short, too quiet, too insular. And as soon as I found out about NFTs, it felt like a perfect fit for poetry, a culturally revered asset that has never really been transacted, right? And what the blockchain does is that it affords it transactability. With that in mind, I co-founded a literary gallery where we onboard traditional poets, pair them with crypto native artists, and create spoken word, immersive works of art, all of them based on original text of poetry.
Very nice. And Akbar, how about yourself?
Yes, nice to meet you all. So twofold here. I have Five Crypto, which is a leading Web3 communications strategy firm where our clients include the Sandbox. So one of our clients is also on with us, Matthew, the US CEO, Doodles, Deadfellas, a lot of the big blue chip and foundational brands in Web3 that are really laying the groundwork for cultural experiences and what culture is going to look like in the metaverse. But today I'm also joining on behalf of People of Crypto Lab. I'm a co-founder of this innovation lab. And we're here to solve for diversity, equity, inclusivity issues in the metaverse and really lay the foundational blueprint for what that looks like. Tech has never really been known to be the most inclusive community, and we're here to change that. I think the metaverse is a huge platform for us to be able to do that. So you'll see behind some of the diverse avatars will be dropping June 17th in the Sandbox. We're also bringing Pride into the metaverse for the first time as one of the biggest cultural integrations. And the purpose really behind this is mass onboarding of communities and making sure we're getting newbies coming in through big cultural moments. So really quick snapshot on what we're doing, but super excited to be here and building in this space.
Very cool. And how about yourself, Matthew?
You're on mute, Matthew.
You're still muted, Matthew.
Hi, yeah, sorry. Hi, everybody. My name is Matthew. I'm the US CEO for the Sandbox, and I'm sure a lot of people in the audience know what the Sandbox is. We are one of the leading decentralized metaverse, and for us, yeah, bringing culture to the metaverse is really, really key to our growth, and we'll come back to this later.
All right, so something that, well, let's start with this, because the metaverse is a term that was first coined in the 1990s, late 80s, early 1990s, in the book Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson, who was on the earlier panel. So, but that wasn't what we're seeing now. That was more of an immersive, you're in this, kind of like, for the people who've never read Snow Crash but may have seen the movie Ready Player One, it's that, where you're actually in it, you can feel it, you can interact with people. So let's start with you, Matthew. Is that where we're going with this? Something that it isn't just something you see on a screen, but it's something that you can actually interact with on a physical level?
I think this could be that. A lot of people, yeah, when they think metaverse, they think the movie Ready Player One for sure, and they think about this super immersive, experience. People live in favelas by the end of the day, but they live this amazing life in the virtual reality. At the Sandbox, we have a different view. We think, first of all, people want to experience the metaverse on different platforms, whether it's going to be eventually on some virtual reality goggles, but it can also be on a desktop, on a PC, on a Mac, and also on mobile. But I really hope we're not going to live in this world. We have one company managing one metaverse. I think it's very close to being a dystopian nightmare. And at the Sandbox, we very much believe in a multi-metaverse world. We believe it should be interoperable between metaverse. And we believe that there should be plenty of different experiences. We believe it shouldn't be controlled by a company, it should be controlled by the people, and it should be controlled by the creators.
Well, to that point, Akbar, when we're looking at who's going to be involved in the metaverse, who's going to be experiencing the metaverse, you're starting to see it, but you don't currently see much diversity and inclusion in the actual end result. So how do we get more involvement? How do we bring more people of different backgrounds and views into the metaverse?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the first steps is investing in creators of color. So, and LGBTQIA creators, anybody from marginalized communities. So like myself, I think, and my co-founder, Simone, who's a Black woman, I'm brown, Muslim, gay, son of immigrants in the US. I think the Sandbox has really taken a stand. We're seeing other worlds do it as well. There was an announcement today in Cointelegraph also about Decentraland doing Pride activations, which is great. As Matthew said, it's all about collaboration. But this is the first step, is actually investing in creators and communities of color to bring them in, to spotlight them. The Sandbox has an incredible game maker fund. That's really how we were able to get our feet off the ground. They were able to give us a grant to work with the gaming studio. So these resources are out there, but they're not talked about as much. So I think we have to do a better job as creators also, and as platforms, in sharing that with larger audiences. And I think there's a really crucial role for Web2 brands here. In order to onboard masses, we're going to need to tap into Web2 brands and their communities. For example, NYX, which is a huge beauty brand globally, part of L'Oreal Group, they tapped into us because they have a really authentic message of Pride 365, and they wanted to enter the metaverse in a unique way. And we were able to offer them an experience where we're celebrating people in the metaverse. And so their audience is 14 million plus people, newbies who don't know about the space. So we're on a big education mission as well, to onboard and educate these folks. We're working with partners like Ledger. We're doing huge community management initiatives. We're pulling in all our partners like different NFT communities like Deadfellas. We're tapping into Web3 and Web2 audiences, but really the issue here is bringing in Web2 audiences to let them know the metaverse exists. It's easy to access. The hurdles to getting into it, like how do you open a wallet? We want them to buy their first NFT avatar through us. So really slow walking them into the space. But I think it's only through seeing ourselves reflected. That's the frustration from which we founded this lab, is we weren't seeing ourselves reflected in rooms. and also groups talking about diversity weren't diverse. So we need to ensure that we have diverse teams representing every company.
So Anna Marie, you're an award-winning poet. You have we were talking before the panel. My favorite of your work is called Transmission. And going into what Akbar and Matthew said, there's something to be said about the technology side, but what about the soul? What about the philosophy, the reason for creating this new universe? I mean, why, in your opinion, what is it about the metaverse and Web3 that could, make expression more powerful, more engaging?
I love that question. And I'd want to also bounce off of what Akbar said in terms of pushing diversity. I think that we should also push for diversity of art forms, of genre. Poetry hasn't had a seat at the art table for the last century, really. I mean, early 1920s, you saw poets and artists in constant conversation, but somehow that whittled off. And I think that the metaverse and Web3 can really help those conversations that are so important revive. I think there's a really interesting opportunity to ask difficult questions about publishing, about how authors and poets are remunerated and how they're included in exhibitions and museums the world over. And I think that bringing those types of questions to the foreground is a huge contribution that Web3 is already starting to deliver on. Lots of work still to be done, no doubt, but at least poetry, digital poems like the ones that I compose are experienced in the same way that digital art is. So now they have a seat at the art table. And that really can lead to new thinking, which I think is something that motivates us all to build in Web3.
Well, it's interesting that you bring that up because, a popular NFT format outside of pictures are audio files and video files. And your work is in an audio file. So everyone, you can go to Anna Marie's website and you can actually listen to the poetry. But Matthew, coming back to you about because there's no real way to say this, but it's expensive to get into some of these platforms. And how do we, for example, we wrote on Decrypt a few weeks ago, and I believe we interviewed you about it. Someone bought a house next to Snoop Dogg on the Sandbox for a few $100,000. Well, the average person is not going to do that. So what do we do to make it possible for the average person who we're hoping to get into this in the future can afford to do so?
I mean, at the Sandbox, we're a platform. So we're putting together creators, in touch with users and gamers. And as a user, as a gamer, you actually don't need to buy land. You don't need to spend this kind of money to really enjoy the Sandbox. And you can already log in, it's free and everyone can roam around and experience diverse, cultural experiences. On the creator side, you can buy a land and you don't have to buy something that expensive. I think today you can buy a piece of land, which is about 2.5 acres from the avatar's perspective. And this would go maybe for a few $1,000s. But you can also be a creator without buying any land. You can, download our creator tools. They are free. They are no code. You download them and you can build, assets already, and you can sell them as NFTs in our marketplace. And it's completely free to use. So it's really affordable, and we hope to onboard a lot of people.
Well, that brings me back to you, Akbar, because we're trying to bring more people into this space. We're trying to make it not look like Web 2, basically, right? We're trying to make it look better. So how do we present it to the masses as something they'd want to be bothered with in the first place? For example, if I'm playing Cyberpunk 2077, and then you're telling me to come over here, why should I?
Yeah, great question. I think it's building experiences, gamified experiences that help tell a story or a narrative. So the Valley of Belonging, which we're launching, which you see these avatars back here, will be part of. That is a imaginative representation of what a diversity, equity, inclusivity center could be in the real world. So we're reimagining that, and we're creating cultural experiences for people to come in, people all over the world. That's the beauty of the metaverse. You know, you could have somebody in Pakistan where it's illegal to be gay come in and celebrate Pride. I mean, how awesome is that? That's the power of what we have here. I know it sounds so simple, but but I think there's a long way to go before it's very easy for people to do that. I've been in the space a few years, but it took me the other day an hour to like mint an NFT. There are challenges, in opening a wallet, making sure you have the right currencies. So we're trying to make it easier. That's what we're working towards. You have platforms like MoonPay allowing credit cards to come in and things. But how do you attract traditional gamers or people that are really in the space to come into these new spaces? Well, it's having collaborators like Deadfellas, who have a built-in Web3 community, having Betty as an advisor, telling her community this is a cool space, or Matt from Event Sevenfold and Death Bats. These kinds of communities vouching for that this is a space you all want to engage in. Also, there's creative things, we do where we want to get people excited to sign up. We're doing giveaways of avatars, of sand. So when you're looking at general consumers like Web 2, it's a little bit different. Giveaways really work. They also work for Web 3, but in order to get them to sign up. But then we have that gap of like the education gap where they might go to open a wallet and get so frustrated they just stop. So the conversion is tough. But in the Web3 space, we've actually in the last 3 days we've seen a lot of excitement. I think the day our sandbox posted about the sand giveaways for people to sign up, we went up by 5,000 people on Twitter just in less than a day. So there is excitement, I think, around new experiences and shared experiences. But culture drives onboarding for sure. Culture drives commerce. We know that. So I think the future of Web3 really is dependent on diverse audiences, and the success of it is as well.
And Anna Marie, to close us out, because Akbar made a very good point about people being able to do in Web3 what they might not be able to do in the physical world. Is it like I know someone, her name is Catherine. She's the head of a DAO called Digivoke, and they are a fashion guild, but they're also weave metaphysical elements into what they're doing. And one of the things that she did was basically create a temple space for people who may not be able to practice their belief in the metaverse. So do you see that as something that we're going to see more of, people who can't express themselves in the real world coming into the metaverse to do it in a safer place?
I think that's been true of the internet almost since its birth. It's a place where people feel free to become a version of themselves that they're perhaps not comfortable sharing with the world around them for many different reasons. And I think that that's not only limited to people in places where there's maybe limitations of freedom of expression. I think there's a freedom that really is afforded by anonymity and by the mediation that technology allows. And it's been wonderful for many people. For me as a poet, I work in solitude, and I've been able to connect with an incredible group of supporters and now friends, thanks to technology, thanks to the virtual realm.
Very nice. I see we have a few minutes left. Everyone, would you mind going around and let everyone know where they can find you on social media? Anna, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm on Twitter as my last name, Caballero, Anna, M-A. So Caballero with 2 L's and Anna with 1 N, and then M-A, which is short for Maria. So Caballero Anna at Twitter.
How about you, Akbar?
On Twitter at Akbar Hamid, AKBARHAMID. Pretty easy.
Matthew, do you want to give out your social media?
Yeah, that's fine. It's on Twitter. It's MNOUZ at MNOUZ. So also pretty easy.
Okay. Well, I don't know if we have time for any questions. Can we get a few in maybe? think they're loading in the background. No? All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining me today, and we'll look forward to seeing what else you have in the future. Anna, we're definitely going to be talking about poetry. So, look forward to what we have in the future. And everyone, thank you for joining us on this panel discussion. And you have their social media, so if you want to reach out and connect, please do so on Twitter. All right. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. You're great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. What a great panel. And now as we transition into our next conversation, I want to talk about URL to IRL in real life, the metaverse collectors crossing into the mainstream. I want to welcome up our panelists, Katia, Asham, and Board Elon Musk, along with our moderator, Sarah Satoshi.
Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Really stoked to be here. And thank you so much, Stacks Foundation, for putting on this incredible Web3 Week event, which I know a lot of people are really excited about. Today, I'm joined with a few panelists who are working on very cool things. And I don't actually personally know any of the panelists who are speaking here today. So I'm excited to be learning their stories with you all and discovering, how they think that our metaverse is going to go mainstream. So yeah, to kick it off, let's just start with some introductions, and we'll go in alphabetical order. So please let us know your name, how you want to be introduced, what you're working on, and how you got into this Web3 metaverse space.
Gotcha. I think I'll start with. So my name is Alem Shah. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey. I'm an entrepreneur and a creative guy. Currently, I'm running one of the world's largest advertising networks, WPPs, big agencies in Turkey. I'm a group CEO. But apart from that, I've been dealing with blockchain since 2017-18. Started as a trader like everybody else, and then jump into the technological part. And over the last 2 years, I started Turkey's first NFT collection, 10K collection, Fluffy Polar Bears, with Selçuk Erdem, with artist Selçuk Erdem. And after that, I co-founded several blockchain game startup. One of them is Spintop, which is like a Steam for games on blockchain. And the other one is Heroes Chain, a game. And the new one is actually launching end of June, which is Trivian's, which is a trivia metaverse. So I'm working as a entrepreneur and angel investor, mostly in the blockchain and Web3. And I started working as an artist, designer, back in 25 years, and over that period, I do lots of web startups and advertising. So I'm really curious about how this new, let's say, iteration of web with this collective thinking and blockchain approach are going to change the world. So happy to be here. Thank you for inviting.
Cool. Board, off to you.
Yeah, hey everyone. Thanks for having me. I go by Board, also known as Board Elon Musk on Twitter. Coming to you live as this green floating head, really trying to be metaversal today. I started off this pseudonymous identity 8 years ago and have grown it over this time, and have really invested a lot of my time and energy into blockchain. Professionally, the human behind this account spent 10 years in the video game industry, and so I'm trying to bridge that experience in gaming now with my passion for blockchain, and I'm very happy to be here today.
Awesome. Katia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Katia. I'm a member of several DAOs. I'm a big DAO fan. I'm a member of Flamingo DAO, VLAO, Metacartel Ventures, Brad DAO. So I'm really interested in exploring those different ways of investing and contributing to the Web3 space. before that, I count like the life before crypto and after crypto. So before crypto was kind of boring and corporate finance and some traditional startups. But about 6 years ago, I started working in the space. And so the last couple of years, I've been focused on DAOs. The last thing that's probably my passion in the metaverse is digital fashion, and that's what Red DAO is focused on. And myself personally, I'm also interested in the space and how it's going to interact with our ways of expressing ourselves in the metaverse, as we do express ourselves with the traditional fashion in real life. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about, you all mentioned how you guys got into Web3. How do you think that other people are going to be onboarded to Web3? Because at its current state, I feel like Web3 and anything that has to do with like the metaverse and NFTs are very niche. And so do you see like certain niches moving forward? How do you see, I guess, just really any component of Web3 heading towards the mainstream? If anyone wants to speak to that.
I think I'm seeing 2-3 entry points and and several challenges. I think the biggest challenge right now is user experience design. So if you ever try to use MetaMask on mobile, it's like a real challenge. Like it's not working. It's not working at all. So most of the Web3 products, including games, are not well designed in the sense of what we see in the fintech, for example. If you look at the fintech startups like Klarna, Revolut, all those, they are really good designed products in terms of experience design. But most of the Web3 is not there yet because of the the plugins, extensions, wallet structures, the current technology. I think this will be one of the biggest obstacles about Web3 becoming mainstream. And from a entry point of view, or let's say the gateway to Web3, I think gaming, or in general gamification or gamification structures, will be one of the main entry point for mainstream, because games, if they are really good, becomes viral very fast, and everyone is looking for something to play and something new to play. And with blockchain, with models like play to earn, play and earn, all these train to earn approaches, while you're having a good game with your friends, you can also make money now. And the more big gaming companies moves into this field, we will see more, let's say, regular consumers are also moving in with them, because there will be a credit of trust. So if, let's say, I don't know, Blizzard is creating a blockchain game, you will definitely check it because it's Blizzard. They are doing amazing games. So I think this will also help.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the point you touched on about the user experience of pretty much every single thing that you have to interact with, metaverse or NFT wise, is just a long way from being, mainstreamly usable. But despite that hurdle, we still see this huge rise in sort of Web3 style, like importance and ownership, or in the gaming industry, or with NFTs. And so maybe, Board, because you've been in the gaming industry for so long, you can speak a little bit to why people are willing to come in to this like new industry and, shift from Web2 to Web3. What are the benefits? What are the trade-offs? And despite the user experience, still lacking a little bit, why are people attracted to the metaverse?
Yeah, I think that you do have these two opposing forces. One is the user experience, which is a hurdle right now and will of course get easier. And the other is the desire for something, right, that the metaverse offers or Web3 offers. Gaming is one example, but if you go back 20, 25 years, people literally learned to use the internet and how to use modems and how to build servers and how to connect with others because they wanted to play a game. It wasn't just a technology that was cool that would just, arbitrarily like be adopted. They had a very real reason to learn how to use the internet. And it wasn't just gaming, right? It might have been how to bank easier. It might have been how to connect with friends and share information with people around the world. So they had these reasons to use this technology that was kind of cumbersome, and they worked with friends and they learned how to jump through those hoops to do what they needed to do. And so we're in the same place today with Web3. Those hoops are MetaMask. Those hoops are learning how to use crypto, how to secure your assets. And so it's difficult, but what you're seeing are experiences that are being built, and many of those experiences are gaming centric or experiential centric, that are finally convincing people to take the plunge, to take the risk, and actually put in the time to learn how to use these technologies that are still nascent. So all of us here are part of that journey and helping basically give people reasons to believe and reasons to jump into the space that we are all a part of today.
Yeah, I definitely think that ownership here is a big sort of aspect that you mentioned in terms of moving towards digital assets or going into any sort of mainstream channel like gaming into the world of the metaverse. That's something that is not really present in Web2, and because Web3 allows for this sort of ownership, you get access to a bunch more sort of benefits from whether it's community participation like within DAOs, and maybe Katya, you can speak to a little bit to how DAOs operate and how DAOs sort of give a new sort of beneficial structure to people being able to participate in communities. And I think that's something that's pretty interesting to explore. So Katya, if you have anything to say about the DAOs.
Oh, for sure. I think if we want to talk about the DAOs, we need to save another couple of hours for that. It's such a big design space. Maybe first I want to start with saying that I think what makes it different now for onboarding the users to Web3, what you mentioned before, is that the NFT space and the metaverse space becomes more consumer. So we start to have more consumer goods. Before that, even before all the technical hurdles, now we have wallets like Arch and Zango that are very nicely designed, and they have social recovery, so people don't really have to store the seed phrase. So we're getting there in terms of the design. But it's still, for most of the people that are outside of the Web3 industry, it's pretty much boring. Because what can you do with your crypto? You can trade it, you can send it to a friend, you can farm it if you are a crazy crypto farmer. But if you're not into finance and real world, you shouldn't be too interested in the DeFi or the other use cases in the crypto. But the NFT space and the metaverse, developing on the metaverse, bringing us the consumer use cases. So people finally started being interested in collecting things, wearing things in digital worlds. And that's, I think, how we onboard a whole new wave of users who were not interested in the previous use cases. What Board has mentioned before, they didn't have a reason to come and explore the Web3 design space because there was nothing interesting in it for them unless they want to send a quick payment in crypto. But for people where the financial system works fine, they really didn't have any reason for that. Yeah, and I can go back to the DAO space a little bit later. I see one of my fellow Alamsa has a question, I think, or comment. What I'm saying.
I think what I want to add about what you're saying. What you're saying is really true, but with that, also brands are entering the field. So brands are entering NFTs and metaverses, and when brands combine the consumer goods that we are, using every day with NFTs and metaverses, that brings a whole different type of consumers who, doesn't know much about NFTs and metaverses, but usually follow what brands are doing, and they will be interested because brands are investing into it. So I think it will bring up brands, but also bring up trust, because most of the challenge with the crypto and blockchain is trust. People only hear the bad stories, hacks and wallet hacks, etc. People are losing their NFTs or stolen, things like that, because they don't understand the field or they don't know the field, so they only see that things that is becoming viral, which is usually either X amount of millions or X amount of millions lost. So there's these two news we hear a lot. So I think brands entering the field and making it accessible to masses, because imagine if Coca-Cola does under the lid NFT campaign, that means there will be like, I don't know, millions of bottles with the codes that you can claim NFTs, which is, if you look at the number of wallets in the world right now who has NFTs, is less than 1 million. So we have a very long way to go. And I think consumer goods brands entering the field will definitely help.
Just to chime in on that, I also have noticed this recent trend in a lot of NFTs being distributed for free. And I think that even though that's a really simple tactic, I think that's going to actually lead to a lot of mainstreaming of NFTs and the ownership of digital assets, because there's a lot of criticism of this space because of, you know, $200,000 monkey pictures and all this crazy amount of money that's being spent and speculated on, to be fair. But if that trust issue is offset by free digital assets being given out to fans of particular communities or verticals, niches, whatever you want to call them, and then those fans starting to feel ownership and value for those things that they never spent money on, and then eventually those things actually having value because other people are willing to pay for them or getting access to utility, that reduces basically all the risk and a lot of the negativity that you see around the speculative nature of this space, and instead just helps onboard people with something that is free. It's almost like gaming and free to play. A lot of people in the gaming space have been hesitant to say spend $60 or $70 to buy a video game which they've never played. They don't know if it's good. And so many publishers have switched to the model of, hey, here's this game, you can play it for free. If you like it, we will, then let you buy things in app and spend money on subscriptions and all these other things. But we're going to prove to you first that it has value for you and that you enjoy it. And I think that this small hack and this sort of approach for onboarding mainstream consumers is going to be really valuable over the next 2 years.
Do you see that model shifting at all to from, say, like something like Fortnite, where the game is free and then you can pay to have skins and a bunch of other features and whatnot? Do you see that model sort of shifting in Web3 to perhaps a play to earn model, where or any sort of other something to earn, exercise to earn, sleep to earn? I think that's probably something that's pretty exciting to think about. Where do you all see that direction heading?
I think my fellow panelists can speak about the play to earn model, because I'm not a big gamer, but there's definitely a wear to earn model that's being emerging now in the Web3. And this is where you're encouraged to wear the digital fashion in different metaverses or different events. And by wearing these digital garments and showing off these NFTs, you can unlock additional value, or you can unlock additional features. Or for example, I know another designer who is working now on an amazing concept where if a certain number of people who have this NFT come together and wear it together, only then the smart contract unlocks another level or another feature for those owners of NFTs. So it encourages people to wear it and to interact with their digital fashion garments and with the metaverses. So I think it doesn't only help people to earn more and to give them more value, but it helps them to interact, not only collect the NFTs, which I think unlocks another behavior patterns that we were missing in the Web3, because so far it was only for collecting and storing and waiting for it to gain value.
Yeah, I'll add that the sort of blank to earn model in general is almost like a loyalty program or a referral marketing program. It's encouraging. There's a certain amount of money that instead of being spent on marketing is being spent on rewarding your consumers, who then are obviously attracting other people and referring their friends to join. Inevitably, as the consumer base grows, the amount of money that can be spent per person goes down. And so if people are not treating this as, a way to make a living, they have to also enjoy whatever that activity is. And at the same time, if they can be rewarded with a little bit of money or some sort of loyalty points, that's a nice to have, but it's not the core reason that they participate. The core reason is because they get some value out of it.
Yeah, I think if you look at fintech, like if you look at the companies like Visa, MasterCard, who've been doing loyalty programs for over 3-4 decades, And if you see how they evolve, they all started giving out like money or points at the beginning. Then over the time, as you said, board, this loses its, its value or its attraction, and they turn into giving out money can't buy experiences. So instead of giving like, I don't know, $63 per month for your amazing expenditure, they give you a, dinner in a place you can't usually book. So things like that. I think we will see similar approaches in the field, the blank to earn field. And I think another, mini trend, micro trend I am seeing is lots of NFT collections that are creating these DAOs, collective DAOs, because either they don't have enough money like Bored Apes, like hundreds of millions, so they cannot do like big stuff. They can only do small stuff. So like they cannot all start their own metaverse. So like 5-6 collection coming together, creating a DAO, and then, I don't know, investing into a sandbox land where, they can all create a collective environment and, engage all of their communities at once. And I think we will see more and more integration between collections, between games, because I think the interoperability, interchangeability is one of the biggest problems. Like yesterday, there was this problem with the Solana network, and everything just shut down. All the games, everything is just shut down. So imagine you're a 5-chain game, and suddenly 2 of them is offline. People from other 3 chains are playing, but you cannot play, and the whole system dynamics are going down. So there's lots of this kind of technical problems that we need to level before these things become mainstream. And I think play to earn is a nice gateway for people to enter into the field. At least have a wallet, at least have a connection, at least test some games. But I think in the long run, when there will be millions of people playing games, buying NFTs, selling NFTs, we need to think more, let's say, well-structured systems to maintain attention.
This was a really insightful panel. Thank you all for joining us. We are just about out of time, but I'm hoping that we can all just give a small, really quick closing statement. How can people get involved and follow along with what you're all doing?
Okay, I can start. Oh, sorry.
No, let's go in reverse alphabetical. Katya, you go ahead.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter, and in my bio, there are all the DAOs that I'm in. You can always reach out to any of those DAOs in Twitter if you feel like you want to get involved with digital fashion or the general NFT space, and it's Flamingo DAO. Noise DAO is for music NFTs, also emerging DAO. It's a great group of people in every DAO, and it's very open to all of the members or creators who want to apply to it with their works. So please reach out.
Thank you everyone for the panel. If anyone wants to reach out, I'm at Board Elon Musk on Twitter. Most of my time these days is spent on Boardbox, which you can find at boardbox.io. If you're interested in blockchain gaming, we're offering recommendations on existing and upcoming blockchain games.
Yeah, my name, Alemsa. It's easy to find. It's everywhere. Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram is the same. So you can reach out to me. And similar to Katya, you can see the old projects that I'm part of in my Twitter profile. And yeah, please reach out. I'm always interested in meeting new people and doing new stuff.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. What a great panel. And we've got a few more left for you today, including our special guest speaker, the author of Snow Crash, among many other novels, Neal Stephenson. And if you haven't done so already, make sure that you hop into Discord. I know you've got Hopin open, but also open up Discord, jump in and go into the Crash Punks Discord. There you'll be able to connect with all the other Crash Punk owners and verify your wallet and ownership of a Crash Punk to be able to have a special Q&A interactive session with Neal Stephenson here in just a little bit as well. And a big shout out and thanks to CrashPunks and to Stacks, who are sponsoring and putting on today, day 2, all about metaverses and GameFi here at Web3 Week as well. Now, with that being said, yours truly is the moderator for our next panel. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the narrative construction and why stories matter in the metaverse. All right. Hey, everybody. So since I introduced the panel, I didn't get a chance to introduce our guest yet. I'm your host for this panel. I'm Kyle Ellicott. I'm a partner at Stacks Ventures. And again, shout out to CrashPunks and Stacks for hosting us today here at day 2 of Web3 Week. And I'm joined by 2 awesome individuals who are well representing in the Stacks community. We've got Jonathan and Henry the Grape. Jonathan, quick introduction for everybody.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Sadlow. I'm the founder and general partner of Gossamer Capital. We're a very active investor in the Stacks ecosystem. We are a Web3 focused venture capital firm. So we're investing in dApps, DeFi, metaverse builders, and you name it. If it's Web3, we're on into it. So great to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you as well. And Henry, before you go ahead and introduce yourself as well, everyone, if you're in Hopin, make sure you do drop your questions into the chat box. I'll do my best to ask them in real time. If not, we'll get to them at the end as well. Henry the Grape, a short little introduction.
Yeah, sure. I'm Henry the Grape. I'm the Chief Communications Officer with CyberKongs. And I also do a bit of community management with the CyberKong. So really happy to be here. And I apologize for giving you like the smallest profile picture of any panel today. I don't know how that happened, but you have to really, really zoom in to see it.
I would say, is there a background? Is there maybe a narrative? Was this pre-planned, for this particular discussion, since we are talking about storytelling as well? But no judgment either way. And guys, I want to just jump right in. I mean, we've heard a lot today about metaverses and building up to those. We've got, the X to earn model, whether it be move to earn, where to earn, play to earn, work to earn models. We talked about new community tools and communication and the importance of educating the entire community, avatars to internet culture, and even kind of a digital or digi-fizzy, a digital physical crossover. For me, I don't know about you guys, but a metaverse by any definition needs to be an endless role of storytelling. I think about those credits in the early Star Wars movies that George Lucas would have, where they just continued to go on and on and on and never knew when they were going to stop, because this opens up each part of the community, allowing them to each contribute, to develop and participate in the growth of this ever expanding world. If metaverses are going to be this ever expanding digital world, multiple characters or single characters, multiple interaction points, will there always need to be a full story, or will they just require a background and you jump right in, or maybe no story at all? And Henry, I'm going to start with you on this one. I mean, with CyberKongs, you guys have a little bit of back history. You have a little bit of a story, but as that grows and expands, I mean, why was that put together, and what would it look like in the future?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting concept, the entire thing. CyberKongs, just for a little context, CyberKongs launched as a COVID relief project for our founder, Mio. Whereas a lot of projects now launch with the intent of being successful as an NFT, maybe there's a business behind it, maybe there are VCs behind it. CyberKongs launched for 0.01 Ethereum on OpenSea. So like imagine that nowadays. And so there wasn't all of this lore behind the scenes with CyberKongs. A lot of what we have, which is still being built out, a lot of what we have as part of our lore, part of our story, is actually being developed as we speak. And one like small piece of that is like my name itself. So I'm Henry the Grape, and that came because our purple furred Kongs are grape Kongs. And when I joined CyberCongs, I was just trying to think of a name, and I thought of Henry the Grape. Well, now we have this thing called Grape Gang. And now Grape has become part of our culture. Like, we have Grape Gang, we have Grape Commands. It's just this thing. And it really started from nothing. It was just me changing my name to Henry the Grape. And as people came into Kongs, I tried to get them on board with this idea of Grape Gang, and it just kind of took off. And so I always say, like, you never know, like, what tiny idea may flourish into something that becomes embedded into your community. And it's something we're always working on. And I think it's extremely important for a successful NFT project to have a story. Because to your point, I think the story needs to start somewhere, and I think it will continue to evolve as we all go into the metaverse. We need to think of endless stories to continue this on, so there is no definitive end point to anything.
That's a great point. Jonathan, anything to add on to that?
Absolutely. I think that's a tremendous point. I mean, it's what we see with memes, the way that they kind of emerge organically and take hold. And Web3 is such a community-oriented space already, and the feedback loop between project owners and creators of these communities and these stories and the users who are now empowered to be owners through NFTs, DAOs that are formed within these groups. It creates that feedback loop. Like Henry said, the story kind of grows organically out of the engagement of the platform, and I think that's a really remarkable kind of difference where we're used to kind of more traditional storytelling that whether it's brands or game designers build. But I think it's also important to remember that on the other end of the avatars there is a human, and we are all humans. And I think Yuval Noah Harari said it best in his book *Sapiens*, where he really laid out how the importance of storytelling. Humans think in stories, and we try to make sense of the world through stories. So still being a great storyteller as a project owner of whether it's a metaverse or DAO or an NFT roadmap is certainly incredibly important.
And Jonathan, you're also an expert in marketing. I'll give you that title. You don't have to take it, but I'll give you that title, knowing you. But you also sit on the other side of as an investor in venture capital, right? We are used to, as investors, hearing the story, hearing the journey, seeing the vision of where things go. But when you start to look at maybe investing in the narrative of a metaverse or metaverses, maybe even pieces of that, the tooling that goes into creating and expanding those, is the narrative important, or what impact may it shift or change for you as an investor looking at these projects?
That's a great question, and it's really challenging. You'll see different games that have different objectives, different characters, different worlds. And how do you know which one's going to be successful? And that's really where you start to look at, what chain is it built on? And you start to look at signals like how engaged is the community around that as a guide for how receptive and engaging that story is. Having a background in marketing and growth, and being a venture-backed, CMO of startups and worked in that world, culture and being a good marketer, you've got to kind of have your finger on culture and understand that, and understand where those stories and that engagement. But it's still incredibly difficult to pick out which are going to be great. You don't know. So you look for those signals. Like I mentioned, the Discord or Telegram communities that are built around it, and the number of memes, kind of as Henry alluded to, that are growing kind of organically out of it, that can really kind of give you that signal of this is something that big communities are going to rally around, large user bases are going to rally around to create that scale.
And Henry, I want to bring a question over to you. I mean, being a part of CyberCongs for such an early time and leading communications over there, how important was the narrative to get right in the beginning as it is today and maybe the future of the project? We've got a lot of people out there looking to maybe start their first project. Metaverses are still in its early days. So kind of walk us through how important it was at each of those phases for you or for others that you've worked with.
Yeah, that's a great question. And obviously we get asked this a lot as an OG project, like, hey, what advice do you have? Or questions like this. And in this ever evolving space where everybody has to constantly adapt to, what is relevant, what worked for us may not be what works for a project launching today. When it comes to CyberKongs, keeping in mind, again, it was not something where Mio had set out from the very beginning to, like, put it this way. He came out with 1,000 Genesis Kongs, a little bit grungy, kind of a little punk rock feeling. And after that, it was the idea to breed babies, which are a little more fun. They're, none of them are smoking, as an example. And then we came out with the VX Kongs, which kind of blended everything together. So we have been, as a brand, because this is our next venture as a project, is becoming a brand, a real life brand through strategic partners. We've been trying to be careful to not fully tell the story, because we want to be able to be a little bit loose depending on which way we want to take the brand. How you brand, how you tell the story may be different if somebody is trying to maybe promote their project to Netflix as a kid series versus somebody who is maybe going to take this into maybe a novel direction that's catering to adults. So I think people really need to decide, like, what direction are we taking the project? What is the ultimate goal of it? And what story do we want to tell that we think will be effective to that end audience? And just being completely honest, CyberKongs do not have a hard and fast lore story. We have certain elements that are absolutes, but we've kind of left certain things open so that way we have the ability to tweak it as the space evolves and depending on where we ultimately want to take the brand.
And I think we're seeing a lot of that on the corporate side or those well-established traditional brands. So I talked earlier about Nike and Nike Land, Disney and several of its brands underneath its parent company are starting to work in this space. We see L'Oreal, we see Meta, or formerly Facebook. We are seeing CVS to even Emirates Airline, and now the NFL, the National Football League, all starting to trial and error different pieces of this. I think to your point of trying to figure out where will the story go. But a question for both of you, because I think it's slightly different if you are the creator of the project and controlling that narrative versus what we've seen in some cases, even with as an example, the Bored Apes, where you actually own a piece of that IP, or you're able to monetize or do something with that IP that you may have purchased. So how important is setting the stage as a narrative for those that may be able to take the IP and take it into their own direction?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I mean, I think it's the central difference between kind of Web 2 storytelling and Web 3 storytelling is that is a shift in ownership and why the community members, and as Henry talked about, they leave it kind of loose and open, and it's organic that the users can come in, take ownership of the story, be part of the story as it unfolds, and take that ownership, whether it's, they want to create a new restaurant or create a show based off of it, having that flexibility. But it's that shift in ownership. I think, I work with and consult with a lot of brands, Fortune 500s, that are getting into Web3 now. And the big shift is, they've built these huge Web 2 audiences and customer bases, and they have these massive databases. And so it's how do you convert those audiences into a community of owners in Web3 that, whether it's you build it around the metaverse, whether you build it around DAO or NFTs related to your project, your products, but within the metaverse, brands are really kind of scratching their head as first how to get into. It's a lot of just kind of showing up arriving, announcing a presence, staking some real estate, and you know, a lot of products, you know, Gatorade or whatever, you know, it's kind of, you know, how do you engage with that product in the metaverse, and what's its role in these digital worlds? And that's where I think, you know, kind of the previous panels of connecting online and offline metaverse experiences is going to continue to unfold as well.
Henry, anything to add?
Yeah, and Jonathan, like that was like perfect, his response. And I think in this decentralized world, you know, one of the core things that really brings us together, and one of, like, I'll call it like a central idea, is this ownership of IP. Like, imagine if George Lucas would have released Star Wars as an NFT, and everybody sort of had their own character that they started to create the lore for and all came together. I imagine Star Wars would have come out a little bit different than it was in George Lucas's mind. But at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of people, and Jonathan and I were talking before about all these different factions in Web3. You're in the DeFi side, you're on the art side, you're on the PFP side, the metaverse side. And I think one of the things that really does bind a lot of the factions together is this idea, like, oh, we get to own something. We didn't just buy a game and we're playing with your avatar, and the items that we collect or we buy in the game are actually, like, they're ours, but they're really yours because they're on your site and I can't do anything with it. I can't sell it. I think this idea of owning IP, or at least having you know, access to our IP, even if in some cases it's not exclusive access. I think this is the idea that draws so many of us to Web3, because we're like, oh my gosh, I can own something and I can do whatever I want with it. I can brand it, I can create a story behind it, and it short tracks certain ideas that maybe people had before, where now if you own a Bored Ape and you want to use your ape as a marketing tool, go for it. If you own a CyberKong and you want to use your CyberKong as a marketing tool, go for it. It just gives us so many options. And I think this changes the world. I really do. I think that's why, like, we're all here talking about it, because we all understand that we're pioneers in this evolving space that really, at its core, I think revolves around, for a lot of people, ownership of IP.
And Henry, on that point, I mean, talking about options and even evolution, you spoke about the different derivatives of cyberkongs that have come out. I mean, do each of those come with their own narrative, or again, does it all kind of start and lead to the same story, and we'll see from the future of there? But every time you come out with a new derivative, or other projects do you think the narrative changes, or do you try to keep the story the same throughout?
Yeah, we've kept common, like, through our actual NFT collections, of which we have three main ones, but then we have it. So one twist, you were talking about play to earn, all these different play to whatevers. We have a play and collect. That is a game we have where you're not actually earning, you're collecting NFTs. It's a gamified minting experience. But all of that being said, that's for our VX Kongs. And there is kind of a central theme between all of our NFTs, because the Genesis Kongs bred the babies, which have traits that are similar, although there are certain traits that the babies don't have. And then the VX Kongs, which are interoperable assets that are going to be used in all metaverses, sandbox, arcade. Like, literally, that's the point of it, is to be able to take this VX and use it in any game and any metaverse. But they all have the common theme of having, like, similar furs, having similar traits. So we've tried to keep that cohesive between all of our collections.
I love it. And a big question for both of you guys. We're here at Web3 Week. Shout out again to Stacks and CrashPunks for sponsoring and bringing this day for us and to all the audience. We're talking about metaverses and gaming. In an earlier panel, there was a comment made that, you know, users, when it comes to gaming, for instance, and the metaverse, don't care about the technology. They really just want to make sure that it works, and it works for them in the way that they want it to. Don't disagree, but also let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin. Let's talk about the technology. Why would you want to build your metaverse or pieces of that metaverse on Bitcoin? Jonathan, I'll let you take this one first.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, yeah. Well, I think it's, you know, this is kind of central to our investment thesis at Gossamer. I mean, we believe that a lot of the value in Web3 will accrue around Bitcoin. And it's a shift from viewing Bitcoin as just an asset to Bitcoin as the network. And when you have the strongest, most durable, most secure, largest blockchain in Bitcoin, I think as you look at DAOs that require security or high stakes NFT projects that have similar characteristics or metaverse characteristics, if I'm a brand and I want to ensure some brand standards and some safety rails, you're going to want to be on the most secure, most valuable platform. And for us, that's Bitcoin.
Absolutely. Guys, we are almost at time. So real quick, Jonathan, where can everyone connect with you and learn more about Gossamer? And then Henry, don't worry, I'm going to get you a chance to shout out as well.
You can find us on Twitter at Gossamer Cap, or check us out on our website. Please send us your pitches. We're always loving to meet new founders. And you can find me on Twitter at jsadlow.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jonathan. Henry the Great, where can everyone learn more?
Yeah, so you can check out CyberKongs at cyberkongs.com. Same with our Twitter. We're at CyberKongs, and I am at Henry the Grape on Twitter. So thank you for having me. It's been a real fun chat with both of you.
Wonderful. Thank you both very much as well. We're going to go ahead and take you guys off stage. And now we're going to welcome up our last panel of the day and our speaker as well, who has notably coined the term metaverses and the author of Snow Crash. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Grace and also Brett, along with Neal Stephenson himself. Take it from here, Grace and Brett.
Hi, everyone. We have Neal Stephenson with us today, and he is a New York Times best-selling author who coined the word metaverse in the 90s in his book, Snow Crash. So he's continued writing many thought-provoking books, and he's influenced millions of people around the world. Today, we'll talk about his books, his thoughts on Web3 and the metaverse, and his predictions for the future. Neal, thank you for being here.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me on your program.
Great. Let's start with your newest book, Termination Shock. And you wrote a book about climate change, or sounding this alarm about climate change. Can you tell us more about the research and catalysts that went into writing this book?
Yeah, I mean, I've been tracking it for a number of years, and I just suddenly felt in about 2019, like, why the hell am I not writing a book about this? And so I kind of dove in, and it's a controversial topic, and the geoengineering, which is what happens in the plot of the book, is super controversial. But for a novelist, for a storyteller, that's exactly what you want. I mean, you want drama, you want conflict, and so I decided to just come up with a pretty simple fictional scenario in which one wealthy individual decides he's going to take matters into his own hands and begin putting sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere to blunt the effects of global warming. And that's already kind of a fait accompli at the beginning of the book, but really what the book is about is how people react to it and what happens, kind of the political fallout that emerges after he does it.
And so, besides that drastic solution, what are some solutions you'd like to see to address climate change, I guess, for real? And do you think, or what do you hope are some actions that people would take after reading your book?
Yeah. So before the Industrial Revolution, the parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere was something like 280. And when I was born, it was 320, and now it's more like 420. So it's come up enormously, and most of that increase has happened while I've been alive, and it's still going up pretty rapidly. Even if everyone follows through on their promises to reduce emissions and move towards a zero emission economy, it's still going to level off, at a considerably higher level even than we have today. So for me, the name of the game is removing carbon from the atmosphere. That's not to say we shouldn't reduce emissions. We have to do that too. But even if we could stop emissions today, we would still have a serious problem, and we would still have to remove a lot of the carbon that's up there, because nature doesn't have any way of doing it in less than about 1 million years. So I think that what we're going to be seeing in coming decades is going to be all about actual direct capture of carbon out of the atmosphere, and sequestering it in provably secure ways. It's a topic I'm personally interested in. In the short term, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody tries geoengineering as described in the book, but that's more of a temporary Band-Aid approach. It's something you would do on an emergency basis to keep things from getting out of hand while a real long-term solution was developed.
Can you tell us more about this geoengineering solution?
Sure. It's pretty simple. It's been known for a long time that when there's a big volcanic eruption, volcanoes inject a lot of sulfur dioxide into the stratosphere, and it floats around up there for a couple of years before it eventually kind of falls to Earth. And it forms little droplets of sulfuric acid, little, you think of them as little ping pong balls, except smaller, and they're all floating around up there. When sunlight hits them, some of the sunlight bounces back into space, and so it doesn't enter the troposphere, which is where weather happens, and it can't warm up the planet. And so there have been any number of historical events where this happened. One of the big ones was in the 530s AD, and helps to explain the fall of the Roman Empire and the creation of the Viking culture. But there have been others since then, most recently Mount Pinatubo in, I think, 1991. So basically when this happens, we observe cooler temperatures all over the globe for a couple of years until the stuff goes away. So it's an experiment that's been performed by nature in an uncontrolled way a lot of times during our history. And that's led to the idea or the proposal that we could do it artificially in a more controlled, engineered way as a stopgap measure to blunt the effects of global warming. And for very good reasons, that's super controversial. But again, for me as a writer, controversial things are kind of, they're the fuel that novels run on.
It's amazing. So when in your book, you actually, the main character is this Texan billionaire who comes up with the solution. And you've been really good at predicting the future. So are you hoping or do you foresee some Texan billionaire to come up with this geoengineering solution?
I doubt it'll be a Texan billionaire. That's what I put in the book because it makes for a better story if it's one person. So that's just basic storytelling 101. I think, and then I had to come up with an explanation for why he didn't immediately get shut down, because chances are that anyone who did this would get shut down pretty soon. So but that was partly to make the point that these kinds of things could be done with fairly modest resources. I mean, the guy is a billionaire, but he's still only one guy, and yet he's still got the resources needed to make a difference. I believe that if this happens, and I think it's likely to happen, that it's more likely to be a government that decides to do it because they see it as being in their national interests. So we've already seen just this spring, just within the last few weeks, we've seen a terrible heat wave in India and Pakistan that put a lot of people in danger. And as the years go by and the carbon dioxide continues to accumulate in the atmosphere, we are going to see something that's called a wet bulb disaster, which just means a situation where in some area both the heat and the humidity get so high that the human body cannot cool itself off, and so mass fatalities result. If you read Kim Stanley Robinson's book, The Ministry for the Future, the opening chapter is a very well drawn description of exactly one of these events. So if we begin to see events in certain areas where potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions of people are dying from heat stroke, then I think it would be entirely reasonable for governments of the affected countries to say, hang on, it's time for us to take action to protect our citizens and protect our national security.
And do you think it will take something that drastic to drive that?
I hope not. I mean, they're smart. They don't have to wait for a practical demonstration to understand that this is something that might happen and might happen soon. On the other hand, politics matters, and so it could be that even if the experts, the climatologists, are predicting this and kind of know that it's almost inevitable, that the political will couldn't be mustered unless there were an event that directly affected a large number of people.
All right, thank you for that. And so if anyone's interested in getting a copy of Termination Shock, anyone who actually buys a Crash Punk this week will be entered to win one of 500 copies of Termination Shock. So there's a good reason to get a Crash Punk right there. Back to you, Grace.
So yeah, grab a copy of Termination Shock. It's out in stores now. We're also giving away free copies if you buy Crash Punk. So since this conference is about the creator economy and supporting artists and creators on the blockchain, let's talk a bit more about your creative process. Your books cover a wide range of topics, from philosophy and religion to cryptography, nanotechnology, and rocket science. What is your process for absorbing all of this information and developing your thoughts to build such detailed worlds? Do you have any systems or preferred methods to approach it?
Well, first of all, thanks for those kind words. I tend to come up with a different process for every book, depending on what kind of book it is and what it is I'm trying to achieve and the unique challenges of a particular book. So, for example, I wrote a historical novel series called The Baroque Cycle that required me to absorb a lot of historical information, a lot of maps, a lot of books, a lot of pictures. And so the process for that is very different from something like, let's say, Fall or Dodge and Hill, which is the book before Termination Shock, which takes place totally in an imaginary universe. And Termination Shock was somewhere in between. a lot of it's kind of, I could imagine just sitting at home in my chair, but there's technical stuff that needed to be studied and some locations I needed to go look at. So there's no one process. In general, like things I've learned are that research is good, but you have to know when to stop. It's very easy to use research as a kind of excuse to not write, and that's bad for a couple of reasons. One is obviously you're not writing anything, but the other is that if you put a bunch of time and money and energy into doing research, then you feel a certain pressure, self-imposed pressure to actually use that in the book. You don't want to see any of that go to waste, and it's really easy to end up just dumping huge amounts of research onto the page that don't necessarily advance the story. So to avoid that, a lot of times what I'll do is pretty early in the process, I'll try to sit down and write the opening chapter, or at least the opening pages, because if you can't get it off to a good start with interesting characters and some interesting situations that'll grab the reader's attention, then the whole project is never going to succeed, no matter how much research you do. So if I feel like I've got something in the way of an opening or a first chapter that's going to be the basis for a book, then I feel like at that point it's a valid choice to start putting some time and energy into doing the research, provided, like I said, that I don't overdo it.
So elaborating on that, what does drive you to explore certain topics in your writing?
Well, as I said, you've got to have a good yarn, a good story, or you got nothing. So that has to be there. But my kind of area of specialization, what I'm known for is exploring reasonably near-term technical, scientific situations, be that environmental change or building things in outer space or what have you. I also have a soft spot for historical fiction, and it happens pretty often that I'll come across a historical tale that where I say to myself, this is obviously something that would make a really interesting book if told in a novelistic style.
Okay, so with your process, because you've been able to predict so much of the future in your writings, is there something that you attribute, some kind of key aspects to your process or the way you think that help you write such prescient work?
Well, it's kind of different for each book, but in the case of Snow Crash, for example, I had been doing a lot of work with computer graphics as part of an art project. And I'd gotten into it way deeper than really made sense. But it became more of a passion thing. It wasn't a sound business proposition. So I was writing a lot of code and building computer graphics application that was hooked up to a bunch of video equipment and other gear. And I just got to thinking about why all of this stuff was so expensive. Because at the time, to get, you've probably heard horror stories about how expensive this stuff used to be. So I won't quote numbers, but I really had to spend a lot of money, even by today's standards, to get the pieces of equipment I needed, and then the computers at the time were still painfully slow. So I started asking myself, what would it take to make computer graphics, 3D computer graphics, into a popular medium, the way TV became a popular medium? So TV at a certain point was also a laboratory experiment that was very expensive and complicated and cantankerous, but because people liked to watch I Love Lucy and the Ed Sullivan Show and other, popular TV programs, millions of people went out and bought these things, and the volume of sales drove the price down and drove the quality up and turned it into a appliance that everybody had in their home. So I just was asking myself, what would it take to achieve a similar transformation with 3D graphics? And I thought, well, maybe there would be an application, a global application that would pull people together into a shared reality. And that was how I got thinking originally about the metaverse. And I don't know, I feel that because it was rooted in some of those practical economic considerations, that helped to drive the vision of the metaverse in a more kind of realistic direction.
Okay, so let's talk about the metaverse. We're out of time here, so we're going to take this discussion to the private Q&A for the CrashPunks community in the Discord. That's for CrashPunk holders only. But Neal, as you know, you've inspired so many people, including the Stacks community. And so we made this CrashPunks collection in honor of your writings and to really spread the writings and the thoughts that you've written so many years ago. And so we want to share with you, I actually hand drew a CrashPunk, Neal Stephenson CrashPunk for you. It's a one-of-one unique NFT that is secured on the Bitcoin blockchain. So Brett, can you reveal that to him?
I can. Let me share my screen. We've also got, let's go. Oh, okay. Can we all see that?
Oh my God. Yeah, wow. There he is.
That is CrashPunk Neal, part of our honorary CrashPunk. What do you think?
I like the bow tie. Very, very natty.
Yeah.
What's the GM?
So GM in Grace.
Oh, going to make it. Yeah. Okay.
GM is just good morning. GM, I guess in the NFT ecosystem is people. Yeah. With the I suppose
I couldn't tell if that was an I or an exclamation.
An exclamation mark. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
All going to make it. It works both ways. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Very, very savvy of you. There you go.
We're going to migrate over to Discord.
We will. So,
thing of beauty. Thank you.
Glad you like it. You can use it as your profile picture.
Okay.
And to access the Discord community as well.
Okay. Yeah. Let me. We'll figure out how to get that moved over.
Yeah. So everyone who's in the audience who holds a CrashPunk, we can shift across to the CrashPunk server. If you're not in there and you do hold a CrashPunk, you can go via the Twitter with the Discord server invite and pop into that server. So we can do that now.
Okay. So I'm going to disappear from Zoom and I'm going to go to that server now.
See you there.
Okay.
Wow, what an ending to the day. Not just that awesome talk with Neal Stephenson, but also Grace going right into the metaverse with the coolest avatar of the day. Wow, very exciting. Guys, I'm going to wrap us up quick. We've had a rock star day here at day 2 of Web3 Week. If you haven't done so already, again, hop into Discord. That's discord.gg/CrashPunks to speak with Neal Stephenson for the private Q&A, interactive, ask some of the questions that you may have dropped and hop in real time with him and also with Grace as well, and meet other community members. Furthermore, a big thank you to Neal Stephenson, to Stacks, to CrashPunks, and to all of our speakers for bringing us together today and sharing their knowledge with each and every one of you. Big thank you to all of you in the community for tuning in. Also, a shout out to Grace and to Trevor Owens as well. Also, more to come as well as we move into day 3 of Web3 Week, kicking off tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern. Now, this will be unmutable. This is all about the intersection of music and blockchains. 2 part of the day packed full of artists, artist managers, to unreleased music, to some of the biggest names in the space, including LimeWire. We also have Warner Music Group. We've got Lucid, to Avenged Sevenfold, Sound Money Crew, and so many more great speakers as well, a part of tomorrow's big highlight on day 3 of Web3 Week. With that, everybody, a big thank you again for tuning in. I'm your host today, Kyle Ellicott, partner at Stacks Ventures. And again, thank you, Neal Stephenson, Stacks, Crash Punks, and I'll see you in Discord. Take care, everybody.